everybody, ReefGrrl here, and welcome to ReefGrrl Live. I am so happy you could make it. The whole idea here is to have some fun, chat, get some questions answered, maybe show off what you're doing, and get to know each other a little bit better. So sit back, relax, grab a drink. The stream is about to begin. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Look, I even remembered to unmute my mic. That's awesome. I see we already have 6 people watching and a whole bunch of comments going on over here. So I have some pretty exciting news, but I'll save that for a little bit later. Hey, Tony Close, UK Reef. You're the first one here. Again, you've been here for quite a while. Nat King Reef. Hey, Nat King Reef, welcome. And there's Taryn's Little Ocean. Nice to see you, Taryn. Filipino Reefer. Hey, Benny. I hope you're doing well. Hope the kids are doing well. That's awesome. Cool. You guys, you're always here so nice and early. That's great. I've spent the last few minutes frantically trying to upload a video of some progress. I just recorded the video a little while ago, and it turned out it was too big to be able to put it up here. So I can't show that to you, but I can tell you about it. And things are moving on. And finally, a big step today. The sump tanks are all laid out and they're ready for plumbing. We haven't drilled any holes yet for bulkheads, but we have the bulkheads. We also have all the PVC and all the little bits and pieces that we need, except for 1 or 2 sort of pieces that aren't necessary for the plumbing, but they're necessary for the stock tanks for the drain section of the one we're using for water changes. So that part's ready. If you saw Instagram, you'll see that I have a set of stairs my husband made me, just a little 2 steps so that I can actually get up and reach the trash can overflow, because of course that's going to be the first point of contact from the tank, and that's where my filter floss and all that sort of thing is going to be. So glad that that's all ready to go. The heater is on the wall, the little 4-gallon mini water heater. And the hoses are going to be run by the plumber. He's going to put in all the proper PEX fittings and all that kind of thing. And we're having an electrician. These guys all know each other. It's great. We had the plumber come in to put the water softener in. My husband thought he could do it, but he thought he would just let a professional take care of it just in case something went wrong. And these guys, they know all the other trades. So we found out about a great electrician via the plumber. And so he's going to come in and put in an extra 15 amp outlet for the pump, the circulating pump for the heater, and an extra 20 amp outlet for the heater itself, because it's, I think, 1600 watts and draws a little bit over 12 amps. So too much for a 15 amp breaker. See what I'm learning? I'm learning all this stuff. So that's underway. My husband spent the afternoon running a bunch of hose. We spent a lot of time yesterday wrestling with 100 feet of PEX hose that's going to be going, about half of it's going to be going in the return chamber. It's the last 100-gallon vessel, stock tank before the return pumps, and then it's going to go back up to the tank. So the plumber is going to get those hoses run over to the heater and install the circulating pump on the wall right near the heater and all that sort of thing. So that's going to happen fairly soon. And RODI, my husband installed the float switch, the little bulkhead drilled through, did that into the side of the 125-gallon tank. And he also drilled a hole in the side for a bulkhead for an emergency overflow in case the float switch ever sticks. Then it'll go through the emergency hose right down into the laundry sink, the utility sink, which is right there. We had that arrangement at the last house too, and it actually did happen once or twice, so it was worth having. So that's ready to go. He's also run the hoses over from the 125-gallon RODI storage container over to where the salt mixing tanks are. Nothing's hooked up yet. And yeah, so he bought himself a hole saw. So now he can just drill all the holes and doesn't have to worry about having somebody else do it. So that's cool. And here's the big news. I paid for my tank today. So I have a big credit card bill, but that's okay. I've been planning for it. And that means the build can start probably in the next day or two. So I didn't realize how excited I would be about that, but I really am. So there's all my news, all in the space of how many minutes? I don't know. How long did that take? 5 minutes maybe? And I think a bunch more people have come in. So yeah, we got 12 or 13 now. That's awesome. Hey, Amanda Bassel, nice to see you. I've seen you in the comments once or twice. That's cool. Alex G's Aquarium. Hi, Alex. Root Boy Reefer Evolution. Hey, Root Boy Reefer. Straight Reefer. Hey, Straight Reefer, welcome. And there's Lynn's Reef Nerd. Glad to see you, Lynn. And Reef Keeper. Hey, Phil. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, so it's starting to feel real. I think it's taken so long to reach the point where everything with the tank was finalized. We were going to drive to the fish store today so that I could pay for it. And there's snow squalls everywhere. There's a lot of open country roads between where we live and the LFS because I'm actually farther away from it now than when we lived in the other town. And so I just called to see if I could pay over the phone, and I could, so I did. And so I ended up spending the time doing other productive things around the house. So, yeah. Who else do we got? Hey, Telegram. Hey, Jim. Hi from a road trip. Yeah, I saw that on Instagram. You guys look like you're having some fun. There's WVU Reefer. Hey, WVU. Hello from Best Virginia. That's got to be a saying. I wonder if that's on your license plates. That's cool. Yeah, and Alex G, I saw on your Insta, you have your pond liner in that 420 that you've been working on. So that's good. That must have been something else. So that's kind of how it's gone. I wonder, no, probably too big. I do have some footage from the webcam of the, I'm drawing a blank, the 90, the holding tank, the one the algae video was about that I just put out today. And it's doing pretty well. It's nothing's really bad. Nothing's really happening to kill anything, or it's all going to be pretty good. So yeah, it's one of those things where I just have to keep my eye on it, and I have to be ready at any point in time to do some rescues and move things around, because there is a little bit of warfare kind of starting again. There are one or two things that aren't in the best spot, and that happens when you have a tank anyway. And I'm so limited as to what my options are with what I can do. I brought my Acanthophilia from Mollywood over to the big tank because it just wasn't getting enough light where it was. It was starting to turn gray, and that really worried me. So there's not much I can do except wait. So the sooner we can get all of the stuff plumbed in the basement and start getting water in there and start the cycle going, I'm looking forward to when I can start bringing the pieces of the reef over here. And it'll be an entirely different process because I don't have to jam it all in an 18 by 48 inch space. I have a 150 gallon stock tank that's 2 by 4 feet. So I've got that extra 6 inches that I had in the Red Sea Reefer. So hopefully I can spread everything out nicely so that it has space and it gets light and good flow. And that's only once that system has cycled. And once I get it over here, I'll just be waiting for the tank. Apparently it's a 6-week build. I don't mind waiting because it's going to be worth it. So that makes it just after my birthday. If it's on time and if it goes as planned, then yeah, a little longer than I expected, but isn't it always? Let's see if we got any questions here. Feel free to ask any questions if you want. Let's see. We love Saturdays with you. Yeah, I enjoy this a lot. I don't know if you noticed the light's different. I got a couple of light things to put up here because the lighting quality in here is just really, really awful. And I don't wear makeup other than a little bit of eye makeup sometimes, because otherwise my eyes will just disappear. And anything that I had is expired long ago. So now with this light, I'm vain and I have to get used to it. So sorry about that. And I also have to get my hair cut, but I promised I wouldn't use the nail scissors this time. So I just have to put it in a hairband during the day. I'm blushing because, Anyway, thanks for listening. Sleaze Stack, hello. Haven't seen you here before. Oh, Alex says he's gonna. I will be in once my phone charges. Oh, that's great. License plates say Wild and Wonderful, West Virginia. That's cool. No haircuts in Ontario. You're right. And it's driving me crazy. I can't stand having it dangling in my eyes. And during the last lockdown, I just got my nail scissors and hacked away at it. In fact, I think there's a picture on Instagram of me and my ridiculous bangs from last May or June. Jim Telegram, he'll remember that. The whole hair thing between Prestige Reef and Jim and myself, we were posting pictures on there of how unruly it all was. Anyway, what else we got? Street Reefer was here. Yay, amazing. It is amazing. Yeah, so Terran's Little Ocean, your two clownfish look like they're doing really well. And I'm amazed at the difference in size between the two of them. When you first got them, I know the small guy was like really tiny, but I don't think I quite appreciated how much bigger the other fish was. So I guess I'm assuming the bigger one's going to be the female. And they look like they're getting along pretty well. So that's cool. Willie and Tilly, the two clownfish that I have, are also doing really well, and they are growing. And I don't know if you watched my reminder video, but if you want some kind of cute footage of them playing in the weepy toadstool, I don't know whether that's where they sleep at night, because of course I'm only there for a couple of hours 3 times a week. I'm kind of hoping it is, because it would be really nice to be able to bring them into the big tank with their toadstool and have them live there. So we'll see. Once I have everything moved over, I'll have a much better idea, of course, of what they actually do at various points through the day, instead of just a couple of hours that I see them. So far, huge size difference. Yeah, that is for sure. Hey, Broke Reef Man 45, how are you doing? So yeah, it's going to be interesting with this room here. It's great now for the live streams, but everything's going to rotate this way towards the door once sorry, I have to activate my hearing thing. I've got these earbuds in that are on a streaming device. And when there's no sound coming through it, except I can hear my voice, but it doesn't come through the streamer, and I have to keep activating it. So yeah, this room is going to be tank with a chair in the corner here, and maybe a shelf beside my utility sink that's right back there, and some shelves up on the wall. I am not going to make it like my last fish room, where I had things stacked everywhere and on the floor and leaning against the wall and behind the door. Not doing it. All of that stuff's going to go in the basement, and I want this to be a peaceful retreat where I can come and sit in my chair with a tiny table beside it, have a coffee, watch the tank, and we'll see if it happens. Because I know myself, it's going to be hard to resist sticking things in little tiny corners where they happen to fit. Yeah, no. So that's kind of my resolution for the fish room. I really don't want it to turn into a big, giant, cluttered mess like my last one was. I didn't have a lot of choice with the last one. I was lucky to have a fish room, and I still had stuff all over the house, aside from what was in there, behind the door, under the shelves, along the wall in tiny little, yeah. So that's kind of my, I guess, I don't know, you could call it a New Year's reefing resolution, and we'll see if it actually happens. Hey, ATF in the house, welcome. And Insane Reefer, nice to see you. So Alan and Oscar and Broke Reef Man, I don't know if you guys heard me going on at length about what's happened this week around here, but I paid for my tank today. So the build will start in the next day or two, I think. And oh, there's Useless Reefer. Thanks for coming in. And it'll be I'll be on tenterhooks for the next 6 weeks, I'm sure. Hopefully it'll all go as planned. My stand is going to be a little different than most people get, but I mean, what else is new? And we'll see what happens. It's getting built in Calgary, which is about 3,000 miles away. So it has to be shipped here from Calgary. But I know that this kind of product gets shipped all over the place all the time. So I'm not really worried about it having any problems with the shipping. And they will bring it to our house. And with any luck, we will be home and we'll know ahead of time when they're coming so that we can have them put it in the garage. And then I have to arrange for someone to come and bring it inside the house. So there's a little bit of logistics involved in getting it in here. But now that I have paid for it and I kind of know what the timeline is, I'm really anxious now to set up my tables, set up my template, and start building the rocks so that I can get those underwater and curing. So that's going to be the next major thing for me. Thanks, Alan. Looking forward to getting started. Best wishes. Thank you. This this is really, I don't know. I wake up and I just think, oh, should I really be doing this? Like, it just feels so major. I mean, any of you guys who have gone through this process with something that's completely different than what you've done before, whatever that happens to end up being, for me, it's the basement sump. We had stuff in the basement with the Red Sea tank, with the saltwater mixing tote and the RODI tote and the pumps to pump things upstairs. So we kind of have an appreciation of what kind of pumps you need, how you need to hook things up and all that kind of thing. But having an actual sump in the basement is going to be different for me. And I mean, I know it's only another extra several feet of return and overflow hose, but it's just a whole different setup. It's going to be interesting doing things that I'm going to need input from what's going on in the tank when I make adjustments in the sump. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to handle that yet. Maybe walkie-talkies, or maybe my husband can be up here and we can text back and forth to figure out what we need to do to fix things. I'm thinking of when the water level needs balancing. I know in the Red Sea tank, when you had to dial that valve so that you could get it silent again to balance the overflow with the return. And being a floor away, I won't have that input from the tank. So I'll have to have somebody up here telling me what's going on up here while I'm downstairs. So that's different for me, really different. Tony Close, what material will this stand be made from? It's going to be powder coated steel. Originally, I was going to go with aluminum, but that was going to be really, really costly. And I couldn't really justify that extra cost, given I wasn't really going to be getting anything from it that I couldn't get from steel. So powder coated steel, and I will have steps that fold down on the three sides, on the three viewing sides. The front one is going to be a solid step all the way across, and the ones on the side are going to be in two sections, because the stand itself is going to be in two sections. It's going to be 66 by 60, 60 wide, 66 front to back, and the stand will be 40 inches high. So it will not fit through any of the doorways. So they're going to split it in half, make it in two pieces, So two 33s that will then be able to fit. We'll have about an inch of clearance. It'll be able to come in our front door. So that's the plan. Yeah. What return pump will you be using? Oh, that's a good question. Hey, Chili Wills, welcome. I'm planning on using the Deltec eFlow 12, and I'll have two of them, and they'll be external. So they'll both be running. They'll each go to a return. And the idea behind having both is that I don't necessarily get what you would think of as extra flow, but if I need to shut one down for any reason, I'll still have the other one going. And I'm not going to have 8 power heads in this tank like I had in my other tank to have targeted flow everywhere. I'm pretty sure, unless anybody has any advice to the contrary from experience or from people you know, I'm pretty sure I'm going to try the max spec jump gyres, the 4K, get 2 of them, one on each side, and go with that. I may also have maybe a couple smaller power heads to run side to side across the back near the bottom, just to keep things moving. But yeah, the eFlow 12s with random flow generator nozzles. And I'm hoping to be able to get them to work this time where I couldn't get it to work last time with the Red Sea tank with each return nozzle, because there'll be 2. I want to split it with a Y so that I can have 2 random flow generators on them. So hopefully I'll get lots of turbulent flow at least a third of the way up the tank, maybe a little farther. I won't really know until I actually set it up and get everything balanced the way it should be. I won't know what that flow is going to be. And that's why I might have to supplement with a couple other power heads, unless the gyres can handle it. So yeah, and the thing is, I'm in Canada, and it's not easy to get Deltec equipment in Canada. And luckily, my local fish store has made arrangements to be a dealer in Canada of Deltec. So I so appreciate that they're working together with Deltec USA, and I will be able to get the pumps that I want. And I'm also getting a Deltec skimmer because Chad was such a great guy. So we're getting a 3000i, and I already know what the name is going to be, but you're going to have to watch the video to find out when it eventually comes out. Hey, Chi-Town, nice to see you. So any other questions about what's going on? I can kind of describe the tank. It's 5/8 inch glass. It'll all be, of course, beveled, polished with armored glass seams and a Eurobrace top and bottom, 21 inches deep. And so that probably will leave me with somewhere around 19.5 inches of water. Because I've asked for the water level to not be right up under the glass. I want it down around 1.5 inches to leave me lots of room for surface flow. I really don't want the water to be splashing out of the tank for obvious reasons. So I decided to leave the water level a little bit lower. And I'm also going to have a very shallow sand bed. I bought 8 30-pound bags of Carib Sea Aragamax. And from the calculation I looked at, that's enough to cover my whole tank somewhere around 1 inch or a little bit over 1 inch deep. So of course, with rocks and things like that, there'll be areas that it'll be a little bit deeper. But overall, it's going to be a very shallow sand bed, mainly for looks, because I really do like the look of sand. Mollywood is bare bottom. Don't really care for it. I know sand collects a lot of detritus, but you can't see it. And then I can fluff it up as I've been accustomed to doing. And the turbid water really benefits some euphilia, especially. So that's the plan. Rude Boy, Reef Evolution. What kind of lighting brand are you going with? I have 2 Orphec Atlantic V4 Gen 2s, which will be the main panel lights over the tank. I also have 2 Orphec OR2 120s, the bar lights, and they will be going down the sides. So the if I'm looking at the tank from the front, the two Atlantics will be going across like this and like this, front to back, like side to side, one at the back, one at the front. The OR2s will be going down the sides. And then I have the Telegram Special Cheapo AliExpress 48-inch, very almost near, lots of blue near UV lights, bar lights. One will go across the front and the other will go across the back. So the bar lights will act like a perimeter. And I first saw that idea on Chase V Reefing on his 250. And the two panel lights will be in the middle. Lots of coverage. I really was so impressed with the Orifec bar lights when I got them. I decided I would go with Orifec whenever I upgraded to a new tank. And so that's what I've done. They're sitting in this room. Where are they? Right there. They're sitting in here. And they're super heavy. I can barely lift one box. I am not kidding. I bet you they weigh like 35 pounds each. So my husband had plans on how he was going to mount them on the ceiling. We have to revise those plans because they're a lot heavier than we had originally expected. Yeah. Hey, Richmond Reefer, how you doing, Jose? And look, there's Sean Sharbuckle's Reef. Nice. Yeah, great. We've got 30 people. Wow, you're a bunch of brave souls. I've been yattering on for almost half an hour now about things. So yes, I have rocks, I have sand, I have lights. The plumbing is about to begin. We have the water heater on the wall. We have the PEX hose wrestled into the 3 coils that it needs to be in to install it. What else do we have? I have the calcium reactor. I have all the parts that I need for that, except for the CO2 bottle. And it turns out there is a local fire supply that will sell you a CO2 bottle for around $150 full, 5 pound, and it costs $25 to refill it, which is the best price we've found anywhere. And the fact that they can supply the bottle to begin with is great, because I don't need to worry about taking one in and having issues with it if it's not properly inspected and yada, yada, yada. So the plans are underway for that. I can hardly wait to start being able to make RODI water, because we have been buying RO water locally from a water place, a water store. And the TDS has been amazing. We've never seen it above 3, but I would much rather make my own, because you just never know. So that's one improvement. Once we go through tomorrow and start being able to make it, I won't have to rely on a store-bought RO anymore. So that's cool. Hey, Nat King Reef. Hey, Nat, if you want the link, let me see here. I'm going to put up the email. So if you email me, Nat, at ReefGrrl@gmail.com, I got my phone right here. I'll keep an eye on it. Actually, I should look and see if anybody else has actually emailed me for a link. Okay, not yet. So yeah, send me an email, Nat, and then I will reply with tonight's link, and then all you have to do is click on it. No app, no account, no password. You'll be in. Here we go. How long till the tank comes in? And Tony Close, you have a time span when the tank is up and running. Well, 6 weeks from tomorrow. And my LFS guy told me, the tank builder guy, he works on Sundays. So he probably works like from Sunday to Friday or something like that. So if that's the case, and if it does take 6 weeks, it will be here the first week in March. So I'm hoping by then to have the sump section in the basement cycled, so that when the tank comes, my plan is to put the sand in after the water. And the reason for that is I'm going to cure my rocks. I'm going to create modular aquascape like I did for the Red Sea, cure the rocks, fill the tank with water. Well, I mean, slowly. Someone here last week said, never fill it right up. And I think that's good advice. So I'm going to fill the tank with water. And once it's running and connected to the sump, then I will put the rocks in from their totes, that they're curing in. And then I will put the sand in. And I figured out a way to do it. I haven't seen anybody else do this. I'm really, really hoping I'm not going to have a massive cloud in it. And I think I can avoid it, pretty sure. So yeah, that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to do that's a little different from most people. So we'll see if it actually works. So maybe by the end of March, we might be able to start moving coral from downstairs to upstairs. I'm hoping by mid-February to be able to start moving the coral from where it is now in the 90 into the 150 here, because I'll be bringing media over from the canister filters. I'll be taking out the sponges when I clean the canister, throwing them in here because of the biology that's in them and that sort of thing, to try and jumpstart a cycle. So we'll see what happens with that. What do we got here? What are the odds been this live stream? Are you new? Oh, you guys have figured out you live near each other. That's cool. Oh, and Alex just dropped in. Yay. You should rinse the sand. That is part of the plan. Yes, definitely. Sleeve stack. The way your sump is set up sounds interesting. Can you describe it again? Sure, I can. Oh, hey, Marco, Mr. DKH is here. I'll bring Alex in, and so he doesn't have to stay waiting, and then I'll describe the sump again and see if I can manage to do it without confusing myself. Hey, Alex.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Had better weeks, but not bad.
Yeah, you've been wrestling with pond liner.
Yeah, no, I got that done.
Good.
So,
Good.
it, still got to do a little bit of straightening out in the corners, but it folded in a lot easier than I thought it would. It just took a lot of prep time. So.
Yeah, it's always the way. All right, I'm just going to send Nat King Reef the link. So, Alex, do you want to describe to people who maybe haven't seen this before, what you're doing with that tank? And I'll send Nat the link.
Sure. Let me switch my camera around here.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, there we go. Let me just. So you walk into my fish room. You'll eventually there'll be.
Wow, that looks clean. Sorry.
So, well, yeah, it's a lot cleaner than it was. So, but this will be the frag tank for the aquarium system. The eventual displays will go, and this will be the frag tank, which it's actually going to be about 400 gallons when I calculated it out. So it's a little bit smaller than it used to be, but not a big deal. And then there will be a sump over here at some point in the future. Not sure. I got to build that. And then I got a 150 on the stand. So this will be a mantis tank. Nice. Water storage tanks. And then my 265 sump, which is going to have the skimmer in it, and all the drains will come in here. And then eventually this will be the refugium tank, which will be a 720. So.
Wow. And you had a little accident with glass today.
Yeah.
Or yesterday? Or yesterday?
A couple days ago. Yeah, I was removing the glass out of the old plywood frame. This is for the old 720. And well, here's the frame for the old reef tank. And after several hours, I managed to get the glass off of it, and it cleaned off one half of the glass, and I was flipping it over on those sawhorses there to just get to the other side, and it slipped out of my hands, fell about a foot, hit the sawhorse, shattered in half, and then hit the floor and shattered into a million pieces.
Oh, smithereens. Oh.
There's about a 3-foot chunk of it that I've shoved back here into like the wall of shame
So was there a little bit of anger, oomph behind that, Alex?
I could cut about a 3-foot piece off and salvage it, but I'm not doing that right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think I will have a piece of glass next week. Maybe if not, I've already got a couple of people I've been talking to about it. So,
cool.
But it's time to press on. So I got the felt underlayment in here, which that went in real easy, and then the pond liner. Basically, I kind of origamied this thing up, so it's one rectangular piece that's 10 feet long and well 15 feet long and 10 feet wide, and all I did to it was make 2 little cuts on the corners, and that's it. The rest of it's all folded.
Wow.
So
holy smokes.
It actually is pretty darn good. I got a little bit more to shore up here, but that's just because there's a few layers of pond liner under here, but it actually turned out really darn good. So.
And do you think it had something to do with how long you've had to think about it? Do you think that helped?
I think it was more of a technique. I went online and when I make the video for it, I found somebody that showed how to do this with a piece of paper, folding a flat piece of paper into this shape, and 4 pond liners, which is quite hilarious to read the comments because several people said, you can't do it like that. Followed by several other comments saying, yes, you can. You're just not being patient. So, because it is not, all the extra parts of it are gathered up over here. So, but it could be folded to be rather flat.
Yeah.
So I'll trim the excess off eventually, and then the canopy's done.
Oh, so, yeah.
But I got one modification I'm going to make to it. So you can see there's one electrical box there, and then there's a couple others, one on each end. So this will 12 outlets. The chains for the light rack are already on, and I've already cut the same material that I'm using on the walls here, FRP board. So this thing basically, once the other tank is done, this just needs to be lifted up and put on top. It's already been, there's screws that come up from the bottom that'll hold the canopy on and help hold the pond liner in place too. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, no kidding. So you're having electrical boxes actually in your canopy?
Yeah, they're not going to be. Let me gently pick this up. So this is the reason there's plastic on top is this is my quote unquote umbrella. It's sloped.
Oh yeah.
Because well, you can't really see it. There is bathroom plumbing and a laundry room plumbing above this tank. And based on past bad experience with plumbing leaks in homes, before my other tanks got online, so it never bothered them, but it did get water in them as a fill test before they were ready, which I decided the water gets on. If water gets on this plastic, it's going to find a way out, and if it finds a way out and on top of my aquarium, I don't want it to go in. So this extends out past the edges of the tank and past the electrical boxes, and it's sloped. I am going to get 2 T fittings and cut this piece of 1-inch PVC here, and then just put a piece of PVC coming this way and that way on each side, so that way if water starts to fall down here, it can't pool up. So
yeah, cool.
But yeah, the boxes though are, well, this one's not wired up yet because it's going to be the terminating box, but they'll look like that. you have a waterproof box on them, and then there'll be FRP boards mounted over here. So
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of outlets around the sump downstairs because, well, when we did the electrical plan for the house, a lot of it was talking about what outlets we might need. And so because of where they are, when you actually see them in reality, right around the area, you go, oh, that's only 18 inches away from 150 gallons of water that's going to be splashing. So we just got those little Odie box liners, the formed PVC, and
Mhm.
my husband reversed them, and he's basically stapled or taped them over top of every outlet to sort of make a hinge so that I can hinge it up to plug something in, and then he's cut out an area in the bottom for the cords to hang. So
Okay.
if a hose ever escapes or anything ever happens, chances of it driving water directly into an electrical box are reduced. Not saying it'll never happen because, of course,
Water does strange things sometimes, and,
Oh yeah,
and yeah, that's why everything will have one of these boxes on it.
yeah.
So
Oh, what are those called?
Waterproof boxes.
You know what? I'm going to show those to Keith, my husband, because
They-
that's the kind
I'll-
of thing we've been looking for, and we don't know what they're called or how to find them. I wonder if you can get them up
They
here.
are for outdoor electrical outlets.
Okay.
So generally in the electrical area, usually around PVC fittings and stuff, you'll have outdoor rated electrical boxes that they
Yeah.
got doors on them, and they'll have some of them, like I got two different kinds. Some of them have a nice little foam here.
Yeah.
So when you put cords in it, it kind of conforms around them.
Yep.
And others
Yep.
have solid punch outs.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's
Come to think of it, the one on our front porch has that. And I know from having to plug the Christmas lights in and pull them out, pulling out is easy because you don't have to see anything. But because of how low the box is, and those lids do not hinge up very far. So I'm down there on
they
my
don't go all
hands.
the way.
Well, I'm on my hands and knees in the snow trying to plug the stupid Christmas lights in. So yeah, anyway. Yeah.
But yeah, so I figure, well, I'm gonna have 12 outlets, and it's funny because I look at this tank and I'm like, when I start it up, I'm gonna put 6 radions over this tank, and then I'm like, wow, I already used half my outlets.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I know the feeling.
There's a chance another box might get added because a couple of them, I'm gonna have to do one plug for my temp controller and recirculation pump that'll go on this wall somewhere for the water storage tank heating coil that'll be over here.
Yeah.
And then just flow pumps in here is all that I'm gonna have. But I did pre-drill my bulkheads too, which get back here. Jeez. So I got two 2-inch bulkheads, which forgot that I screwed the underlayment down, so I can't get to the other one. But yeah, so there's
cool.
2 2-inch drains, and then those will be set up to either go straight to the sump or they'll divert to the water storage tanks that'll be where I'm standing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
But
Cool.
yeah, no, things are. I'm very happy with this being done, despite shattering a piece of glass this week, which is honestly one of the very first times I've ever done that. I might have broken a glass top here or there, but I've never. Boy, now I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I've ever really shattered aquarium outside of drilling one. So.
Wow.
But this tank is not done yet because I am going to line the bottom of it with travertine. And so it'll have a tile bottom on it. I'm not going to glue it or cement it. It's just going to be down there to protect it. I'm going to put a second piece of pond liner down before I do that.
Yeah.
So And then I am considering in this tank, I haven't 100% decided if I'm going to do it, but I am thinking I am going to buy like some 16th or 8th inch acrylic,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to line the three sides that aren't the glass with it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I would like, considering I have hair algae problems at the moment, I would like to be able to get some long spine sea urchins
Yeah.
to help rid me of that problem. But I don't know how tasty they would find a pond liner, and I don't really want to find out.
No, not that way.
No, not that way.
Yeah.
So if I do that outside of some kind of burrowing worm, which honestly, there's not much you could do about that either way.
No.
This,
I could see that. I could totally see that, because not only that, if you ever did have to scrape anything off of it, it'd be much safer to scrape it off acrylic than off of, a plastic.
Yeah.
It's a really thick plastic.
So, but that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. And I don't even care if water gets behind it. I just don't want it. I don't want fish or, some of my herbivores to decide that the pond liner is a tasty treat.
Well, especially if algae grows on it, because, and fish can be jerks. We know this.
Yeah.
So,
and I know that for a fact it will, hair algae will cling to pond liners since I have so much of it right now.
Yeah. Experience.
Yeah.
Cool.
But no, so this is looking good. We'll see what happens when I actually seal it, and hopefully it holds water.
Yeah.
So
there is that.
I am confident. I found several examples of this being done, some of which got posted to my YouTube where I was talking about this a little. So
yeah.
I still want to experiment with sealers, though. Oh, hold on. We're going to try 3 different things, which this one is old and I doubt it's going to work because it's probably all cured, but I'm going to use my...
Oh, the RTV.
Yeah, we're going to use RTV.
That was your nemesis with getting the other thing apart.
Yeah, well, let me see if my contraption's still over here that I was doing that with.
Hey, Carlos 23, glad you could make it.
So this is what I was.
No, you go ahead.
This is what I was cutting the RTV with, which is basically a piece of stainless steel wire, like a big garrote.
Like a ring saw.
Yeah, I snapped about a dozen pieces of stainless steel doing this. So,
oh my goodness,
that stuff, no joke.
Yep. I was going to say, I thought you were going to just pick up that hammer.
We do not want to do that with the second piece of glass.
No, I don't think so.
I will be more careful next time. So, I already grabbed a tube of silicone.
See, I can always blame it on low blood sugar when I do stuff like that. It's like, oh, I must have had low blood sugar.
So these are the 3 products that I'm going to test on the pond liner. Now, this stuff is supposed to work on EDPM liners and basically connect to anything. It works underwater.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this one works.
Right.
I've seen people do this silicone, and what I really want to do is just test out all of them against each other to see what they do.
Well, the silicone is that silicone 1 versus 2, and one of them has an anti-mold.
Yeah, you don't want silicone 2.
No.
Some of this stuff will even say it has no mold for 7 years, but the silicone 1 doesn't have anything in it. It doesn't have inhibitors in it.
Yeah.
So I don't really use this stuff often in the like I'll use it for bulkheads and things like that, or threaded fittings.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a good thing I found out a few years ago. If you don't like Teflon tape and you have leaky fittings all the time, don't use Teflon tape and just put silicone on it and thread it in with that. Works way better.
Yeah, that's what my husband's talked about that when he's telling me about the plumbing that's going to be done. He's taking care of all of that stuff, so I don't have to worry about. I'm lucky that way. I guess I could do it if I really had to, but I mean, why? Tools scare me. I don't have good grip strength. So, you know, I don't trust myself with anything that I'd have to squeeze a trigger or, and look, because I do get trigger finger in my index finger. So yeah, I mean, and he really likes doing that part of it. You can't believe the videos he's watched. He's learning all about RO systems and all the different valves and shutoffs and flushing this and how to add another membrane and the gauges and blah, blah, blah. He goes into it way more than I ever would. So this is good.
You can go down some fun rabbit holes on YouTube with that stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That is for sure.
But I'm hoping this stuff works because I trust this stuff and I've used it before. So.
And obviously it does work because we've seen the proof.
Yeah. Well, I haven't cut this up and thrown it away yet, but you can kind of see the garrote marks on there. I was able to move about that much every time I yanked on it if I was lucky.
Is that something where you could use like something like a ring saw that has a motor, or would that just be too much of an instrument?
I was afraid to hit the glass, and I figured that was, I didn't mind scratching it. I didn't want to chip it or crack it.
Right.
So, which I did have a couple tiny chips that I saw after I removed it, and I was like, I could sand those out. It won't hurt nothing. But the dropping it on the floor and shattering it was not.
There's no coming back from that.
Yeah, it's not like corals where you could frag the glass and have it grow back. It does not work.
Or throw it in a furnace that you got over in the corner and melt it down again and float it on another piece of tin, right?
That's a little too complicated, and I don't think I'd survive the process. So,
what? Your wife won't let you have a metal molten glass can in your basement?
I don't like really hot stuff, and I used to help people in metal shop when I was in high school, and being by our little blast furnace we had, I was not happy to help.
Yeah, so, you kind of lose a lot of arm hair around those things. Oh, hey, Ugly Man's Reefing, welcome. So, Alex, I'm going to tell Sleazestack about my sump. Thanks for the tour. I'm amazed at the progress you've made. I think it's great. Like, really, it probably doesn't feel like enough to you, but when we see it once a week, it's amazing how far you get.
Yeah, no, I've been looking at it and like, wow, I'm getting this done a lot faster than I thought I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
awesome.
But hey, I'd rather have it done than not.
Yeah, exactly. And there's only one way to get there. It's to do it. Okay, Sleazestack. So I found a picture while Alex was talking, and this is what it looks like. It isn't plumbed yet, but you can see that there are a bunch of stock tanks here. The bottom two are 100 gallons each, and the one underneath the little wooden bridge between the two walls is 150 gallons. And then the one on top of the bridge, we call it the Blue Carbon Bridge because Blue Carbon Reefing was the one who advised actually building a platform independent of resting it on the 150, which in retrospect would have been a very bad idea. So we were glad to get that advice. So the shallow 50 gallon does not have a drain in it. So we're going to drill a bulkhead. I say we, but you know what I mean. It's my husband who's going to do it. Going to drill a bulkhead through there and run the pipe down into the 150 that's below it, aiming towards the back, underneath the bridge, if you will. The green trash can, I call it my trash can overflow. And once the tank is in, that's where the pipes will come down from the overflow. And inside that trash can, I'll have something to hold filter floss. That'll be sort of the first point of contact for the water, for collecting detritus and all of that. It'll probably be a smaller container inside this trash can that will filter the water through the filter floss. The black lid is on there. I've got the steps. I can walk up the steps, lift the lid, swap out the filter floss as often as I need to. Then the water will come out of the trash can, probably through holes we're going to drill around the sides. Not sure where yet. We have to decide what kind of a water level we want to try and maintain in there. So they'll come out, the water will come out of there into the shallow 50. It'll go out of the shallow 50 down into the 150 below it. And then the plumbing for the 150 will come out of the side. And the side that's facing us right behind that stud wall, there's a flat spot, kind of like where the Rubbermaid is written on the side of the 100-gallon stock tank that you can see below to the front. There's another spot like that back there. So that's where the bulkheads will be to run the drain for that tank and an emergency. So we're going to have two pipes coming out of there through the openings between the studs and on this side of the stud wall to go over the top rim of that first 100, the one that's farthest out front, farthest to the left. So the water will go out of the 150 into the 100, the main pipe. The emergency will be probably 1/2 inch above the normal water level, so that if anything ever gets clogged up in the main drain, the water can still escape through the emergency without probably too much of a problem. Then the 100 that it's going to go into right there, the one on the left, that's just going to have a lid on it. I'll probably have a whole bunch of rocks in there for extra biological filtration, and it's going to be used for water changes. Nothing else really in there. The plumbing for that one is going to come out of the side of it on the opposite side of where it says Rubbermaid. It's going to come out that side, come towards the stock tank on the right, and go in this side. I'm pointing at it. You can't see me. So they'll be joined together, and that will be the normal flow of the water. And that final stock tank is essentially the return chamber. But the pumps will be external, and they'll be just on the other side of it on a platform of some type that will make them level with wherever the bulkhead is that's going to exit the water from this final return chamber. That's where the ATO will be, and that's where the coiled PEX hose will be for the heating system. What else? Oh yeah, there's also going to be off of the pipe that runs, the main drain that runs from the 150 to the first 100, there'll be a T with a shutoff that can divert the water over to the last 100, stop the flow to the first 100 so that I can then isolate it and do water changes from that tank alone, while the rest of the system is running from the 150 to the 100 and then through the return pumps and back upstairs. So I can't think of what else to say about it, except I really hope it works. So let's see if there's any questions about all of that. Okay, so that's kind of the plan. And we until the tank arrives, I want to try and run that as a closed system. So get the water in all of the vessels, hook up. I'm just going to use a Jabo return pump that I had from my last tank to run the sump system. So the Jabo pump will be in that last 100-gallon stock tank, and it will pump water through just a flexible hose up to the trash can. The only difference is because everything alive is going to be in the 150, the first point of contact for the dirty water coming out of the 150 is going to be that first 100 that I plan to use for water changes. So we had to come up with a way to create it to create sort of a way to filter it as if it were an overflow that had mechanical filtration. So we're just going to put a container in, and the pipe that comes over the edge will drain into the container exactly the same way as the trash can is going to work, except it'll be located in the first 100 while the sump is a closed system. So the whole hope here is that I can get the sump as a closed system up and running and working and cycled, and turn it effectively into an aquarium so that I can bring the contents of my reef back and put them in the 150-gallon area. And I might be able to put a few things in the other areas as long as I have the right light for them, or the ability to put a light on them. And if I run out of space or there's some sort of a problem. So if I can get that all cycled and running and ready for my reef, then that'll be great. Because then when the tank arrives, I'll get it filled with water. I'll get the rocks in there. I'll get the sand in there. I'll make sure there's a heater and power heads just to keep the water circulating. And then on one magical day, we'll hook up the return pumps and we'll open everything up and hope that it works. I have 100 gallons of salt water on standby if I need more, and see what happens. So there's a lot of uncertainties because we've never done this before. We've done a lot of research, both my husband and I, for each of us for the different parts of things we're working on. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least. Any more questions? Amanda Bassel and WVU Reefer are discovering that they live very close to each other and have for a while and didn't even know it. That's cool. Hey, Nat King Reef, if you want to try again, we can. I can bring you in and see if we can get your sound working. So what else can I say? Oh, and I've been looking at fish longingly because it seems like right now a lot of the fish that I really want to get for the new system are available. And I don't know if the same thing is happening to Alex, but I'm finding it very, very hard not to just go and get that blonde naso tang and get some anthias and get a couple pyramid butterflies and just can't do it yet though.
Just asking for trouble.
I know. Royal Grandmas. I want to do what you did. I want a bunch of them, 5 or 6. And I could get them right now, but where am I going to put them? Mollywood, maybe?
Those you can get, at least those you can get a little bit more readily. So that's true. One good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not that expensive right now.
Yeah, and some of those, like the Royal Grommas and some of the Pseudochromas, I've seen more and more talk of breeding programs with them. So yeah, that's good. And mine were breeding like crazy. I just, that is not my desire to get into that.
No, so. And unfortunately, with the filtration that we have, they don't really stand a chance.
It can be done, but it's a lot of work, and I don't have the patience for that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, even when I think about what I did with the mollies, I'd have to watch for the pregnant ones because as soon as they turn square across the bottom, it's coming. And then they start hanging around near the surface of the water. And usually that night is when they'll have the babies. What I've noticed is they have them after, usually after lights out, you start seeing the babies if you stick a flashlight in there. Bear gruff, don't they fight? Oh, if you have a lot of them? No, Alex, you had a bunch. If you have enough, they kind of develop a pecking order, don't they?
Yeah, so you have to have a big enough tank.
Yeah.
In Royal Grammas, I've done it with pseudochromas too, which they are Royal Grammas are far easier. You could still get one that becomes a highly territorial male, and if there's a lot of other males, he might eliminate them over
Yeah.
time. But if you have a really big reef tank, they can have enough room to where they'll space out and not bother each other that way. Like my big male, he had a huge nest that he constantly was working on, and I have to assume there were eggs in it often,
Mm.
just because of how vigorously he defended it. And the same thing, the purple pseudochromis, I had 5 I bought originally, and I know one got eaten. The other one, I believe that same fate happened because it just didn't have a hiding place.
Yeah.
No, but I had 3 of them in there, and they each had about a third of that tank, but they were actively breeding.
Mm.
And I caught their spawns hatching at night because I actually put them under the microscope and I identified them as such.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and with the mollies, the only way to get them out is to take a net. You have to have a place to put them. And ultimately, the thing that worked the best was to use one of those little tiny breeder boxes that suction cup onto the glass. And I would just put them in there with a tiny bit of Kato and make sure the lids were on and the top of it was above the water. And then I would just feed them a mix of First Bites, the Hikari stuff, and Phytoplan, which I think is a Two Little Fishies phytoplankton powder. It was successful, but it was a PITA. It just, because every once in a while, one of the adult mollies would try and jump in, and because the lids had little holes in them for your fingers to pull the lids off, they would get down through the hole, and then they'd be thrashing around in there. And when you tried to and then they would go over the overflow, and they would be in the return chamber swimming around. And I would try and get them, and they would hide, and then they would get drawn all the way down and get macerated in the pump. It was constant. And after a while, you start going, okay, I'm not saving any more. I'm not saving any more of them. And then you'd see one little guy, by the size of him, you could tell he was at least a couple weeks old, and he'd survived that long. And you'd think, you know what? He survived this long. I got to save him. And it would start all over again.
yeah, it's a survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
So I would look at it. I like even the purple pseudochromis or the royal grammas, if it was like, well, even Bangai cardinals, like they bred all the time in my tank too. But if you don't catch them out, I never in my reef, and they held all the time, including the spotted cardinals. I never once saw a baby.
Yeah. It becomes fish food.
Yeah. Somebody,
Yeah.
the sea anemone got them. The coral got them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just, I don't have the time for that. And it is a lot of work.
And I have to say, it tears at your heart, because anything you do along those lines, you're nurturing those things. And then to see them not survive, it's nature's way. I mean, it is what that's how it is, but it still tears away at you emotionally. At least it does me. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy when you've been trying and it's failing. And, ideally the way I'd like it to work is I look in my 720 or something one day and I'm like, whoa, there's fish in there. I didn't put those in there.
Yeah.
How did that happen? And then I could say, okay, this is the type of breeding situation I like because I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I established a natural system that can handle it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Nat got back in. I'm going to bring Nat King Reef in, see what he's been up to.
So quiet.
Hey, Nat.
Hey, what's going on? How's everybody doing? Can y'all hear me clearly?
Sure can.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's great.
Goodness. Alex G, what's up? Hey, ReefGrrl. How y'all doing?
How's it going?
Good.
Now I got to try to figure out how could I turn this around.
In cam mic settings, just go in there. Just don't X out of it, or it'll hang up. So, it's
Okay.
kind of weird. Oh, I really wish I'd organized this stuff better when I packed up.
I'm getting the troll glasses ready, and you know why.
Okay. Do you guys have an idea of how to turn this camera around?
Let's see. Yeah, it's cam and mic, and then camera. And then you gotta scroll down if you're on your phone, and it'll say front facing or back.
What kind of phone do you have, Nat?
Now it's breaking up. Oh my goodness, this is sucks.
What kind of phone do you have?
I have the iPhone XR.
So, I think at the bottom of your screen, like Alex was saying, camera and mic settings.
Now I can only hear you clear from the TV. That's crazy.
I think you might have to turn it down.
Camera and mic settings. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. And then you look down and it might say there might be a choice to flip it around. I think you might have to turn it down. Oh, there we go.
Ah, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Finally got it.
Cool. And Nat, can you rotate your phone so it's horizontal?
Oh, there you go. Hold on. Wait.
Awesome.
All right, much better.
And everybody put your orange glasses on.
So sorry for the dirty glass, but what I recently got was this hippo tang.
You got a hippo tang there?
Yeah, hold on. Where is this guy at? Just recently got him for my birthday.
I see him. Yeah.
And I recently got also a purple tang somewhere around here. There you go. Swimming around.
I see him. Yeah.
Now, one of the course that I was looking for that I wish I could get from you, I finally found it. A little small one though of the Space Invader.
Oh, cool. Let me put my orange glasses on. Yeah.
I should have done better with the lighting. I had no idea it would have been this dark.
Do you have any of those phone filters?
That I don't have, you see? I got to get it together.
That's okay. I got my Billy Pipes glasses on.
You know what? Let me change the lighting on. Ah, okay. That's good. This is much better.
That's okay. I got my Billy Pipes glasses on.
I'm hearing her through the TV in a delay.
Yeah.
All right, let me put the TV down. All right, there we go. This is much better.
Oh, perfect. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Let me turn on the.
You figured it out. Awesome.
Figuring it out. There you go. I'll go back to the regular settings after we're done.
Oh,
But
this is good. Yeah.
Finally coming along pretty good.
Yeah. I like your rocks. I like the legs and the platforms.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much. These rocks, I got them from C40.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when he broke down his first tank, and I ended up getting the rocks from him, he hooked me up with them. They're pretty nice. They're really
Very nice.
But so the thing is that I'm not running a skimmer. I'm not too much of a big user of skimmer. I use it once in a while, and it's for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But for now, in my sump, all I have is rocks and filter sock
Mm-hmm.
And I run a GFO a little bit here and there.
And how big is that tank?
90 gallons.
Very nice.
So what I end up doing, because the pH was always kind of a lower bit, because there's really no air coming in here. So I used an aqua lifter,
Uh-huh.
and I got the bubbles going into the
Yep.
sump, and I ran the line. It's like a fiberglass. They had the cable line running through it in the basement.
Yep.
So I put the line going outside.
Nice.
So pour some fresh air from outside to go in the tank.
Yep. Yeah, I did that with the Red Sea tank in the sump. I had a Whisper air pump right beside the open window, and I ran it down into the sump, and I continually had fresh air in an air stone in the sump. And of course, with the new tank, I'll do the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just have to decide where.
Yeah, but it's definitely it's really good. I end up getting the green chromis, but what was crazy about the chromis is that at Petco the small ones are $11.99,
Oh boy.
and the big ones are $9.99. I just don't get that.
No, me neither.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just get it anyway.
Cool. I like that rabbit fish too.
Oh yes, yeah, the rabbit one is super cool as well.
Yeah, the fish look like they're doing good.
Yeah, they're doing really good. They doing really, really good. Of course, what I end up having, I had a flame hawk, which is my favorite fish, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I end up getting one. I did not have luck with this one, because this one, all it wanted to do is just sit on this A can that I have right here.
Mm-hmm.
So it would not open up at all. So I end up getting rid of it. I end up taking it out and putting it in the sump, and it just sat in the sump for a few months, and I recently got rid of it.
Mm.
But I'm definitely looking to get another flame hawk. I figured if I get them really small, I
Mm-hmm.
never have that issue when they're really small.
Yeah.
But when you get them a nice size, yeah, they like to just sit on the corals all day.
Yeah. Yeah, I love flame hawks myself. It's one of my favorite fish. I'll definitely be getting them. One at least.
Definitely. So I'm definitely looking at getting a smaller one, because I don't need it to just sit on my 8 cans and try to relax. That's a no.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So what are your plans for this tank then? Do you have plans for a certain kind of coral? Are you going to stick with a mixed reef? What are you going to do?
I'm going to stick with a mixed reef, but I'm going to take because what I did before, and when this was set up before, I just ended up getting a whole bunch of corals and filled it up, right?
Yeah.
But then I had a lot of corals that was just encrusted into the rock that was just killing each other. This time I want to do it a little bit different. I want to get corals that I'm really interested of getting, like things that I'm really looking for.
Yeah.
Not just getting it up just to fill it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do different this time.
Yeah. I hear you. I'm not very good at curating my coral collection. I'm especially bad when I go to coral shows, because it's the prices. You know, they're just so cheap, and the colors look so nice under the blue lights.
Exactly.
And you should bring 5 home, and you bring 25 home. And then what do you do with them? They all have to go way too close together. So I'm very, very bad at that.
Man,
especially at like Reefapalooza, New York. Like you go there, you get so many cheap corals and good prices. Like you said, the way they look underneath the light, there's many times I didn't even realize that I purchased the same coral.
Yeah. Yeah. That's happened to me. I have 2 red cyphastrias for that exact reason.
That's always the fun one, when I've had that happen to me several times, and you're going to acclimate them and dip them, and then you put them in, you're like, hey, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you've got that perfect spot for them, and you go to put them in that perfect spot, and it's like, oh, there's already one there. Yeah.
Oh, let me go back to.
So what do you keep in there in the way of like inverts, crabs, shrimp, snails, that kind of thing?
Sorry, repeat it again. It was breaking up.
What do you have for inverts in there, like crabs, snails, that kind of stuff?
I have a few snails.
Yeah.
Sand sifting snails in there. That's the only thing I got for right now. But I'm trying to figure out like what cleanup crew should I get to like really clean up like fries with the fish waste.
Yeah. Well, I was
Because
just
they have a lot
noticing.
of it just hidden underneath the rock.
Yeah. I was noticing how clean it actually looks. Like your glass, I know you said it's not clean, but the back is clean. Like it looks like it's like you're not getting overgrowth of anything.
Nah, not really. The rocks I had cycling for like I say about a good 3 to 4 months.
Oh yeah.
And I was just constantly using the water from another tank to dump in there.
Yeah.
So I wasn't mixing any water or anything like that. So that came out pretty good. And you always have the tanks and everything picking at the rocks and a rabbit fish picking at the rocks. It helps out a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely helps out a lot. It helps out a lot. But that's my plan for now, is trying to see, because what I originally was waiting for is to get a custom stand made.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting stood up by the person that was supposed to making it, because he just kept promising me that he's gonna do it, or he have other projects with other customers and this and that, and it just didn't work out. So I wanted to set up the tank. I'm like, you know what? Let me just use the old stand, because the simple fact that it's low to the ground.
Yeah.
I wanted something really high up I could work with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I made my stand 40 inches. And the tank itself is only 21. So the total height is a little bit, it's pretty close to what the Red Sea tank was.
Nice.
But I really don't like having to bend over all the time to see into the tank.
Nice.
Hey, Gabe, Reef Tampa. Bear Gruff has a question. Maybe one of you guys can answer. I recently saw Than's vid, or is that Dan? I don't know how that's pronounced. On quarantining all new fish. I don't have a QT tank, but I'm wondering if a formalin dip would be helpful or too stressful on local fish store fish that may have just come out of copper. Or who knows what at the LFS. Yeah, I don't know. I buy fish that have already been quarantined because I don't have the expertise, the time, or the space to do it, or access to meds. So what do you guys think?
Well, so my last system, I did not run a quarantine tank. And one of the things, well, one, I knew my LFS was getting stuff from a good supplier, so I knew it was coming from, and I used to buy a very large majority of my fish directly from the wholesaler bag from my LFS. Like, he'd go to the wholesaler and get them that day, have them bagged up a little bigger, and then he'd float them in his tanks to hold temp. And then I'd take them from the wholesaler.
Mm-hmm.
And when I acclimated them, I would do 3 rounds of acclimation. And the last round, I would put in a product called Paragard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Looking for. There it is. I'm sitting
here. I think I have some too. Yeah.
So let's see. Here we go.
I don't quarantine my fish at all. My LFS, they got this system all running on copper. Especially there's a system with just a fish in there. They got it running on copper. So when I buy it, I just drip line and put them in. Yeah. But I look for like fish that just been in the system for like a week or so, maybe a good 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. If it's looking healthy and it's eating right in front of me, I'm gonna grab it up.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if a fish has been at the local fish store for some length of time, and it's been there and it looks healthy, and my LFS does treat them when they first come in, and they don't do a full 72-day or whatever 3-month quarantine, they treat them. Then they observe them for a couple of days. And if any of them look unhealthy or as if they're going to have issues, those fish get treated further. The others get put for sale because I'm pretty sure they put them in copper when they first get them. Other than wrasses, they treat them a little differently. But they still recommend that when you take them home, you do quarantine them, because what they do really isn't quarantine. It's just treating for whatever might be there at the time, then observing for a little while, treating again if they can see flukes or something like that. Because
Gotcha.
do you use Paragard for flukes? Is that one of the things?
Now I got to read the bottle.
Uh-oh, sorry. Sorry, Alex.
It's basically for ectoparasites, fungal, bacterial, and viral lesions. I mean, it's like it's a formalin alternative, which I'll just be honest, like formalin is a liquid form of formaldehyde, so you got to be careful with that stuff.
Yeah.
I think it is listed as a carcinogen now.
Mm.
But the Paragard, for me, I just dip them, the water they're being acclimated in, I'll dump in like a capful or something, depending on the size of the bag. And they're in that for 15 minutes, maybe 20. And then I pull them out of the bag and I put them into a specimen cup, and then I flush them with tank water like once or twice over to get all the Paragard out and flush anything that could have fallen off.
Yeah.
And then they go right in. But I'll say with my new system, I'm going to have a arrival center tank for them. And they're just going to come in. I'm not going to treat any medications in there. They're just going to go in there for like a month before they can go into the display for observation.
Yeah, when I was setting up the Red Sea tank, I had an observation tank for new fish. It was only a 20-gallon, and it was where I kept a lot of the frags that I was keeping to put into the Red Sea tank as I dismantled my 29 cube. And the observation worked really well. One Royal Grandma that I got was great, and then it started looking a little bit lethargic, and I started noticing the flukes. It had flukes on its gills. So I'm pretty sure it was Paragard that I put in there for whatever the directions said. And then the fish was fine. And I had that fish for another 2 years. And then I think it got harassed to death because it got scared to come out of its little cave. Hey, listen, this green wrasse has a lot to answer for. Anyway, he's not going to be in my new tank. He's going to be taken to the LFS and live in their frag tank. Yeah.
Guys, let me ask you an opinion about something. I just got the Neuro 5s that I got in the back, right? And I'm trying to figure out the best way to position them. Do you think it's better to be on the side or on the back of the glass?
I don't know. What do you think, Alex? You're more experienced with this than me.
So I would probably say is, where are you trying to direct the heavier water flow, and where do you want the flow to be lighter?
I want the heavier flow to be on this side of the tank. That way we can catch everything that's like behind the rocks.
Okay.
Right? And the lighter one, I mean, it's hard for me to try to figure out because the return water that's coming in is pretty strong, right? So I'm trying to figure out, should I make this side the stronger side and this one the lower side because, it don't have too much going on over here? Like, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, a lot of that, like if you have your return, which direction is your return directed?
It's directed like hitting like right here in the glass. Like
okay,
it's coming straight ahead, hitting this glass.
Okay. So, because it's a pretty strong direct flow, now if you want to try and keep things stirred up a little bit on the bottom,
yes,
you could split it and try to redirect some of it straight down. Not all of it, because you don't want the sand blowing around, but you can direct it that way a bit, and that could kind of help. The only thing with putting a power head kind of like where that Nero's at in the corner
Yes.
is that it's going to kind of hamper a little bit of how the water can get to that propeller pump.
Oh, okay.
Because it has to pull water in, and in order to do that, it's going to pull the surrounding water that's around it in. So you might want to move it a little bit away. But pumps are kind of funny in the fact that when you put it in, the strongest flow is actually wherever that pump is like going to hit. So the glass in the front is going to get some really high flow coming at it. But around the back side of it, it's going to be a more gentle, wider flow at that point.
Gotcha.
So it might take some experimenting, and it might take, if you really want strong flow on like those rocks or something there,
Yeah.
you might need to take it off, put it onto the side, and lower it a little bit, and then just kind of experiment with it to see just how strong it's hitting those rocks.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I guess it also depends on what you want to do about surface agitation, because it looks like the surface of your water's good, like it's got a lot of turnover.
Yeah, the surface definitely.
So what I've done sometimes with pumps like that is put them about halfway down and aim them up if I want a really widespread flow, because aiming them up at the surface of the water, that'll act as if it almost was a piece of glass, because the pump will go up and then it'll deflect, like, the same angle down while it churns the surface of the water. So you can actually push the water farther by moving the pump down, aiming it up, and then having it bounce back down again. And it also depends on what the whether it's pulsing or not, or chaotic, whether it has those kinds of settings, because that also affects what happens with the water, especially if you aim it at the surface. Because if it stops and goes all the time, you get some really cool flow patterns almost directly below that stop and go. So your rocks are pretty low, so you might be able to get away with that. Like, you might not see it actually break the surface, but it will, and then it'll deflect back down and it extends the reach of the water farther. I do this with nano pumps all the time, and I don't think I've ever had a power head that's actually high power that's meant for a 4-foot tank. I've always had them that are only meant for 24-inch push. And I just extend the reach of the power head by the direction that I aim it towards the surface or off the glass at the back.
Ah.
It's really interesting. And if you aim it right at something, laminar flow becomes turbulent downstream from a solid object. So if you've got just a plain power head and you want to get some turbulence out of it, if you have it hit a rock, or something, some outcropping, or even the glass, if you have it go into something that's going to flow around, on the other side of that thing, the water will be turbulent. So you can use that too if you want to get some kind of extra movement out of the flow that you wouldn't normally get out of a regular power head. It works. Like, I wouldn't have believed it, but that's one of the reasons I had 8 power heads in the Red Sea tank, was because I had them all targeted different places to do different things. And some of them intersected with others, and some of them were intermittent. And so the flow in that thing was exactly what I wanted. And it was chaotic, and it was strong where it had to be, and it was gentle where it had to be. So no dead spots. When I moved the reef, I could not believe how clean the sand was behind those rocks on the bottom. So it whatever that was, it worked.
Yeah, that's why I'm definitely trying to avoid any dead spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Calypso's Reefs. Hey, Hector. Sorry, Nat.
Oh, not a problem.
It's fun
Yeah, a lot of
playing
it too
with
is watching when you feed the tank, and
Yeah.
that helps too to kind of get a picture of the flow because I don't use feed mode because I think it's kind of gimmicky.
Really? You don't use the
And
feed mode?
I don't
no,
actually either.
I
No, I don't
you know
either.
I've been snorkeling in a lot of different reefs in several different oceans, and the flow doesn't shut off when it's feeding time for the fish.
Yeah. I have to
Well,
say you got a great point.
well, what I've noticed is if the flow is shut off, the only time I shut the flow off totally is when I'm target feeding corals with coral food.
Okay.
And if I put flakes in the water for the fish to keep them away from the coral, they don't know what to do because they're used to chasing it. So
Gotcha.
if the food isn't moving, they don't go after it.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, when I turn off the pumps and the return, they know it's feeding time. All the fish go up.
You got them trained.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they learn feeding time just like automatic feeders.
Yeah.
If you don't know your timings real well and you're not always home when they're hitting, you'll go sit in front of your tank and then all of a sudden all the fish are gathering in one spot. And you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And you hear the feeder tick over and you're like, oh, that's what this is. So, but
That's
yeah,
one
it's
thing I never used was the automatic feeder. I guess because I feed every other day, I don't feed every day. I know some people used to feeding every day.
yeah, I had a really high fish load in my last tank, so I had the automatic feeders going off twice a day in each tank,
Ah,
and then I used to feed frozen generally every day or every other day. So, and then I toss live white worms in periodically too.
ah.
Wow. Hmm.
That's what I definitely got to work on is getting to really pick out a good cleaning crew. That's what I definitely need in the sink as well.
Yeah. It's
Well, you
hard
got
because go ahead, Alex.
it's a
Sorry.
it's a 90 gallon tank.
Oh, hold on, it broke up. Sorry, say it again.
It's a 90 gallon.
Yes, 90 gallon.
So if you're looking for are you looking for sand cleanup crew or just general algae?
That's pretty much just for sand.
I would say in a tank that size, you can get 1 or 2 sand sifting starfish,
Oh,
and
okay.
they do eat the microfauna on the sand, but that tank's big enough. You should be able to support 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
And they'll keep the surface turned over. And then to get underneath the rocks and everything, I am a huge fan of tiger tail cucumbers.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
That's right. You had a mess of them in your tank.
I had like 2 dozen of those things when I broke the tank down. They were everywhere. They would been splitting on me.
Yeah.
So my local fish store is like, could you stop bringing me those? I don't want any more.
What's it called?
Tiger tail cucumbers, sea cucumbers.
Tiger tail cucumbers. Gotcha.
So they're not the most pleasant of looking creatures, but
They get the job done.
they basically, if you could imagine, they eat sand on one end and they clean it and they poop it out clean on the other side.
Wow, that's great.
So, and they go to all the hard to reach places. So is your rock, before you get one though, is your rock structure touching the bottom glass or is it sitting on the sand?
Sitting on the sand.
So make sure you wiggle your rocks down to where they're touching the bottom glass because sea cucumbers will go right under rocks.
Ah.
But they are some of the best cleaners out there. Some people do not like them because they're afraid they'll poison their tank. But I have never met anybody that has had that actually happen.
Gotcha.
So
Hmm.
they don't generally climb the walls or go by power heads. It's pretty rare. They stay to the sand.
Cool. Well, I was afraid to get an urchin because I'm always afraid to get something I'm not sure I'll be able to keep alive once it does its job. But now that I'm having to actually feed all the algae eaters with nori, the urchin, I put a clip near a rock and the urchin goes over and eats it. And he's eating the coralline algae, which is fine. I don't mind. There are the odd little spots here and there of what kind of looks like bryopsis, but I know it isn't. It's not hair algae. It's a different kind of algae with little sort of fern-like bases and longer stems that stick up. And he goes along and eats that stuff. So now I'm really glad I got him because he's very entertaining to watch. Right at the moment, he has two utter chaos pallies stuck to him. So you can always find him because all you have to do is look for the orange dots, and there he is. And I was kind of hoping you would pick up a red mushroom that was floating around the back corner. But anyway, it's quite entertaining.
Yeah, urchins are rather fun to watch, especially when they have their mouth up to the glass and you just watch them.
Yep.
Slow, and it's like, wow, what a life that is, you know.
Constant eating. So the diadema urchins, Alex, the black ones with the red eyes, the long spines, that you're saying the long spine blacks you want to get.
If I have bad hair algae problems or severe algae problems, that is like my number one go-to.
Yeah. I love how they look. Absolutely love them. But I'm not sure what they're like in a tank. Do they do damage at all? Do they knock stuff over? Or
they'll knock things over potentially, but I used to have them with a full-blown LPS and clam tank, and they used to walk over the clams and walk over the LPS, and it's like a bed of nails. There's so many spines on them. They don't hurt anything. They just mosey on over the top of it, and they go about their way eating. And I've never seen one of those mess with corals before. And they don't particularly like coralline algae. They are more, they want some kind of heavy algae to be eating.
Mm-hmm. Neat. Yeah, I might think about that. That's the thing with more space. I have more options because I know those things get very big too.
Just get really small ones if you can. It will become very large fairly quickly, and you're going to look at it and go, holy crap, this thing is like soccer ball size now.
Yeah. And how do I get it out if I have to?
Just use your hands.
Yeah. Okay.
I've actually done that before. No, the best way to get long spines or any urchins, you could use a net and just kind of pop them off a rock or something. Or specimen cups are a good choice.
Yeah.
All right.
I really like specimen cups for that.
Sorry, Nat.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. I gotta go, but it's definitely been a pleasure.
Oh, I'm glad you came on. It was great to see your tank. Thanks for showing us.
Appreciate it. I really appreciate it. But I will definitely be tuning in while I'll be doing some work. I'm gonna have you guys playing on the TV screen.
Oh, that's cool. All right. Thanks a lot, Nat.
Not a problem. Take care.
Good night.
Bye.
That's cool. I was going to do the troll glasses thing, but we got to talking real fast. So look, I even had them ready. Anybody else want to come in who's never been in here before? Dan Woods. Hey, Dan. Dan has a question. I have 150 gallon. What's the best way to feed soft coral?
What kind of soft coral?
Yeah, we'd It's one of those double-edged swords. You can put a lot of stuff in the water and hope they catch it, and whatever they don't catch is going to end up as excess nutrients.
Yeah, it really depends on the kind too, because some of them are very active feeders and others are not.
Yeah. And what I like doing is still stirring up the sand and getting really turbid water going. And you can almost see them. Well, pulsing xenia, for example, with Mollywood being bare bottom, there's a lot of dusty detritus that collects in that corner because, of course, it's right below the power head. And when I stir that stuff up, which I do regularly so that it can go all through the tank and feed the gorgonian and everything else, it's amazing. They pulse faster. And it's almost like they're getting whatever it is in that stuff. So yeah, that's one way, I guess, is stir up your sand with a turkey baster and get some of that stuff up in the water column.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, I used to get the microscope out and look at detritus or a little cup of sand, and you see all the life in there.
Yeah.
You stir that stuff up, a lot of that stuff goes floating around, and that's all natural food for corals. So that's a real good way. And other than that, I don't usually target feed softies, but I don't keep I haven't really messed with non-photosynthetic ones, which they need some real heavy target feeding if you don't have something set up natural for them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's their only source of nutrition. There's no zooxanth LA. There's no photosynthesis to assist them. And hey, Bahama Llama Coral's here. Nice to see you. Well, WVU Reefer says he feed his weeping willow with reefroids when I feed the gonnies. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, if they're taking it. Usually they're pretty. A lot of leather corals and stuff. I always find I've never really messed around with target feeding them, like stirring up sand or just. That's another thing. Like why I don't use feed mode in my tanks is when I feed all the other corals, like the soft corals, they'll get a little bit of that food too.
As it circulates. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed with, what do you guys use to lower nitrates? Dirty sand water is better than a type of food. Well, I would say it's a more natural food because it will contain some of what you put in as food, maybe processed or maybe in smaller pieces or who knows, part of fish waste. And it's just more natural. Because, I mean, when you think of what happens in the ocean, especially if there's a storm or whatever, or for corals that come from river mouths and deltas where there's a lot of turbid water. I read somewhere that Australian torches particularly like turbid water because that's their natural environment is river mouths and sort of very, very fast flowing silty water. So that's one of the reasons I started stirring up the sand because you're right, Alex. I never even thought of that. When you were looking in your microscope at just a drop of water, just imagine the amount of bacterium and just single cell organisms that might be in the sand. So you stir that stuff up and it becomes food for all the corals, especially if you do it after dark or just before lights out.
And that's why it's so important to me always to have a really strong microfauna population in the tank because that it's serves a multitude of things. They naturally spawn and they'll release stuff into the water column. You stir it up, that'll release more into the water column, and in turn, they're also helping to keep that sand clean. They can't break detritus down beyond its final level, but they'll feed on everything else that's in there.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say before. The sand that is in the 90, I have stirred it up a number of times. It is not dirty. And I don't know whether that's because I've been feeding the correct amount for what's in there, or because whatever's developed in there as far as an ecosystem is taking care of everything. Because I did bring the rocks over intact from the other tank, so they would be loaded with whatever microscopic stuff is going to take care of that. But it really has surprised me because it doesn't raise the same amount of turbidity as I used to get when I did it in the Red Sea tank. So maybe it's the green wrasse too, because he's constantly diving in and out of the sand and stirring it up. So maybe that's the part of the job that fish does to keep it clean. I don't know. I don't even know where he sleeps in that tank. Because there isn't a lot of deep sand in there.
You'd be surprised where they go sometimes. They find some odd places where I've gone, why are you going in there? Especially when I want to catch you.
Yeah. So Dan Wood says, won't that hurt my microfauna? Not necessarily.
Not if you just do a small area. You don't want to stir the whole thing. Just do a couple handfuls here and there.
Yeah. I used to do the back corner and then the opposite front corner and then the back corner and then the opposite front corner and then the middle at the front and the middle at the back. And not all at the same time, but I would kind of rotate like that. And it was a great way to keep things clean. And I never had problems with sand in that, the sand being dirty. And like I said, when I took the reef apart, I expected, those awful clouds you get of dark brown, horrible.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, of course. I really expected that and got none of it. It amazed me. And those rocks were right on the bottom. Well, they were on egg crate, but they weren't sitting on top of the sand. They were right on the bottom. So yeah, it was cool. I
had a fair amount of that on the LPS side of my tank.
Yeah.
But yeah, that a lot of it was because I had rocks that were literally big rocks just completely buried in sand, where I was like, well, this part of the aquascape really didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Well, one of the plans I have for the new aquascape is to do what I did for Mollywood, which is create the things, leave a couple of inches, and raise them all up on little feet. So that when I put the sand in, I only have those little feet as points of contact. I don't have a big, massive piece of rock collecting detritus around in all the crevices. And it worked really well in Mollywood. So we'll see. We'll see if it works in the big tank as well, the new one. Chili Wills wants to know, what do you guys use to lower nitrates? Alex?
Geez, this is a subject I avoid on forums because people get so heated on it. So I seldom, because this isn't a message forum, I'll say what I do. So first, what I would want to know is, how high are your nitrates?
Yep.
If they're in an acceptable range, which I personally look at like 20 or less, then I would say do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
If they are very high and you're getting into the 50, 80 plus parts per million, it is a matter of understanding what is generating them. Because naturally, your reef tank, especially a reef tank, will not generate nitrates in really high quantities unless you are doing something to encourage them.
Yeah.
And this comes back to understanding the nitrogen cycle. So things break into ammonia, and ammonia to nitrite, and then nitrite to nitrate. And the difference is that ammonia, the ammonia and the nitrifying bacteria that convert things into nitrate are aerobic. So they use oxygen for that process to work. Nitrate removal, to denitrify something, those bacteria are anaerobic. Mm-hmm. So they live without oxygen, and they don't typically like to be in areas with high light either.
Yeah.
If your now, so I see nitrates are 20. So if they're going up, you can do water changes that will dilute it, and that's an easy way. But I tend to go, what's causing them? And
Mhm.
if they continue to climb, my first question would be are you using filter socks or filter floss or bio balls or some kind of biological media that's in a high flow area? If so, there's a good chance you have a nitrate factory, and you're becoming too efficient with your biological filtration, and you've kind of lost the balance between the nitrifying bacteria that live in oxygen versus the ones that don't. A good example of that would be let's say you feed some mysis in the tank, it gets sucked down and overflow and into a filter sock. Well, it's not likely there's going to be microfauna or something there to eat it or consume it, but that high water flow going over it and the bacteria present there for nitrifying are going to rapidly break that down, and it's not going to have a chance to be consumed because it's getting basically battered to death by water flow, and it's just going to decompose.
Yeah.
So that's something that I would say is try to understand where it's coming from. That's why when people are trying to dose nitrates, I'm like, I don't understand this. What
Mhm.
if you want higher nitrates, just put some filter socks in, or if you really want nitrates, throw a canister filter on stuff and don't do anything to it for a few
Mhm.
months, and you'll
Yeah.
get more nitrates than you know what to do with.
Yeah, it always struck me as crazy how we do everything we can to reduce nutrients so that we can dose them back in. I don't get that. And I think
Yeah.
there are also natural cycles that happen. So sometimes if you just keep doing what you're doing, those whatever has happened to cause those high nitrates will balance itself out. But like you said, if they do start shooting up, the first thing I always look at is exactly that, mechanical filtration or buildup of detritus, let's say in the bottom of your sump. Like you said, bioballs, even my pond matrix. When I first set up the Red Sea, I just sprinkled it. I sprinkled it all over the bottom. Oh boy, was that ever a mistake? I thought it would be fine. What did I know, right? It was only the second tank I ever had with a sump. Well, you soon learn how disgustingly dirty that stuff gets and how hard it is to keep it clean. And the problem with it getting that dirty is it is a nitrate factory. So that's when I built the little racks with the slots to get them up off of the bottom. And once I did that, nitrates leveled right out. So you're that's probably number one. And then David Long, hey David Long, nice to see you. The most simple way to lower nitrates is to do water changes. And when you think about it, when the nitrogen cycle is done, and you have nitrates 50, 60, whatever they are, because of the bacteria being so active, that's the first thing you do when you know your cycle is done is you do a big water change, and that dilutes the nitrates and you get down to an acceptable level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
The other thing, if you can't get it going, is you can make denitrification filters. There's sulfur denitrators, and
mhm.
I've done them in the past where I make denitrification filters. That's basically making an anaerobic environment for bacteria. So low
Yeah.
flow, no oxygen. Um,
Mhm.
they do work, but again, if you find the culprit that's causing it, um, that'll eliminate the problem. And one of the reasons I don't use filter socks other than for a fun joke. My last system being 1,600 gallons, my nitrates were at 10 constantly, and I
Yeah.
never really did anything to try and encourage,
Yeah.
lowering them or raising them.
Yeah. Yeah, once it reaches that balance. Well, there you go. Wow, that really helped a lot. I do use filter socks. Yeah, maybe try and swap them out a little more frequently or clean them a little more frequently. Somebody
Yeah,
back here, sorry.
I was gonna say, or just only use them when you want to polish the water. If you're gonna stir things up for a day or two, Toss them in when you're doing that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you could dare try without them.
But like that makes a lot of sense, and I'd never really looked at it that way before, because the filter socks or the filter media cups or whatever, they collect all that stuff and keep it in one place. And you're right, it is high flow, high oxygen, so whatever happens there is going to be rapid, and that makes total sense to me now. So if you take them away, whatever happens is going to be slower, and you stand a better chance of whatever detritus is there finding that spot in that dead spot in your sump where there might be a low oxygen area. Although I was doing some reading on that when I was looking at using Miracle Mud, and the requirement I think for is anaerobic is no oxygen is something below 2.5%. Am I right about the oxygen level?
It's not as easy to achieve as everybody thinks. Like, it has to be, if there's high flow around it, it will try to balance itself.
Yeah. That's where the deep sand beds all came in.
Yeah, because if you really can restrict the water movement, that's the way to do it. And the other thing too, kind of like when everything settles down, if it doesn't go through a filter sock, more than likely your detritus is filled up with microfauna and copepods and stuff. Yep. And trust me, if they find a little mysis shrimp or something, I've done that with. I don't think I ever did it on a live stream, but I've done that as an experiment. Put mysis in a petri dish and toss it into the tank and leave it there for a half a day, and you come back and look at it, and there's like millions of organisms that are on that thing eating it.
And they be having babies.
Yeah, and then those babies can help feed your coral.
Exactly. So it becomes a part of a naturally, ecologically self-sustaining thing.
Yeah. Here's another one. Does the ocean have a filter sock on it? Does not.
But it's got bazillions of gallons of water, even more than you're going to have, Alex.
Yeah, it's not even a drop in the ocean.
Dan Woods said something back here that we got to talk about. I heard that boiling a rock to get rid of those is a good practice. Yeah. Come on, Dan Woods. Is this a troll comment? You don't really mean that, do you? No,
Please
it is not a good idea. No, don't. It could be lethal, not just to you, but to your family and your pets. So, be respectful of those things. In all seriousness, I have ongoing lung damage from my scrape with pallies. I don't even know if it was actually palitoxin or whether it was residue on the rock, but I got the dust. I breathed in the dust, and I still have that little residual cough. And that was 4 years ago. So been there, done that. It was not fun. I was really, really sick for a day and a half. I couldn't even sit up. We had the talk, my husband and I had the talk about what to tell the paramedics if I had an emergency situation in the middle of the night when I went to bed. Yeah, it was very, very scary. There's a video on my channel, palitoxin. I was stupid because I was stupid. Didn't wear a mask, had the glasses, had the gloves, ran the water, didn't wear a mask, and I breathed the dust. So just Google it. Google boiling zoanthus, and that's a rabbit hole.
Any live rock or any aquarium stuff, do not boil it, because besides that, there are other animals that contain some pretty nasty toxins that can aerosolize.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what it is and you start getting sick, it's gonna be even more difficult to try and get treatment for it.
Dan Woods, now I see where you're coming from. Okay, well. Yeah.
I don't see the chat, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, Chili Will says, you guys are great. My eyes have been open. Super. Well, that's good. Well, you know what? That's what we're here for. It's a great way to
Yeah.
sort of just toss it around, and I always learn something, that's for sure.
Yeah, the 5 or 6 years of dealing with 80 plus parts per million of nitrates taught me a lot about them.
Like the giant tumors your goldfish get when the nitrates are so high because you just top it up. You don't understand that you're supposed to do water changes. Yeah, that was how I started. When the water evaporated, I just added more. I had no idea. And they were fine. They were goldfish. They're hardy, but they would get large tumors on their sides. And I wouldn't even want to speculate what the nitrate levels were in the tanks by the end of the winter, because we brought them in for the winter, and then they went into the pond all summer long. Yeah, but that was
Yeah,
that was pre-internet, so it was a little different trying to learn things.
gonna say my bout with that was in the 90s, pre-internet, and it took, it was, oh, we'll just keep doing water changes, you'll be fine. And it's like a 125 gallon tank, and I was doing 30 and 50 gallon water changes, and the nitrates would drop for about a day and a half, and then they'd come right back. And I know they were way beyond 80 parts per million. It's as high as the test went.
Yeah. So
Um,
what ultimately, what was the problem?
I learned the hard way that setting up a saltwater aquarium, and this was in part to the advice we took, using Magnum 350 canister filters, and if you've been around in the hobby long enough, quicksand filters is a really poor choice with no protein skimmer. And we eventually did have a protein skimmer, although that really didn't help.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a train wreck of a tank. And then when I finally built a denitrification filter and got it running, I dropped my nitrates from 80 parts per million down to like 0 within like a month and a half, 2 months.
Wow. Yeah,
So
it's amazing what you learn and how. And I guess if you've been, well, Alex, how did you start with fresh water then? Or did you start with salt?
so I started with fresh water beyond goldfish in a bowl. Uh, when I was a little boy, I got a 5 gallon aquarium to have, and I had that for many years. And when I look back at it, I was like, boy, did we do stuff bad for that. I used to do 100% water changes every week. We
Mhm.
catch the fish out, we put them
Right out of
into something
yeah,
else.
right
We
out of the
dump the
tap.
whole tank out, rinse it out. We used distilled water for it. We wouldn't use tap.
Okay.
So we did that every single week, I think, just about for years. And then I started learning more, and I believe my dad really wanted to have a saltwater aquarium, and he was kind of using me as the means to do it. So it was mine, but my mom wouldn't let him put it anywhere in the house except my room. So the aquarium went in my room. So I jumped from a 5 gallon freshwater to 125 gallon saltwater.
Wow. How old were you
Yeah,
then?
it was not it was a very failed tank that taught me a lot. And then when I finally got it going really well with fish, I started working at local fish stores not long after that. And then I wanted to convert it into a reef, and then it was like my first reef tank failure.
Oh boy.
Which I probably could have gotten through it, but I didn't know enough then. But yeah, it's like anything else. It takes time and patience. And I started
Experience.
keeping other tanks and kept working at the local fish store and gaining knowledge. And
Yep.
by the time I got out of there, I had really successful tanks going, and I had changed my philosophies a lot on how I did stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first tank I had, the saltwater tank, I thought this beautiful dark purple 1/4 inch thick blanket on everything was pretty. Well, it was cyano. And there's so many things wrong with that tank. And I just kind of followed the directions I was given by the person that gave it to me. And it was the worst advice going. Anyway, I went from there because I was fascinated with it. And, you know, even today, it's constantly engaging. It makes you think. You have to plan. There are so many different kinds of skills that you need to have a successful reef tank. I mean, I guess if you had enough money, you could have a successful reef tank and never put your hands in it because you're paying someone to look after it. So you could have something beautiful to look at in your house. I'm sure people do. But for me, this hobby is hands-on in the tank, learning stuff and troubleshooting. I've just become so much better at troubleshooting. I was always pretty good at diagnosing things, you know, just figuring things out. But man, oh man, this has really taught me a lot. And the project that's coming up is super ambitious for me because there are so many things about it that I've never done before. So I don't think I'll lose sleep over it. And because I've been setting aside the money, I'm not worried about that part of it. You know, it's not like I'm spending grocery money on my reef tank at this point. So I'm really looking forward to it. I can hardly wait until the neighbors are walking by and they stop and look at the blue glow. Because this is the front of the house. Oh, hey, Sheenka. ReefGrrl, good vibes. Thank you. Yeah.
So you got to make up something funny with them if they are. What's all that blue lighting for? And be like, I'm making maple syrup.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. No, it's too late. They already know. Most of them already know there's going to be a reef tank in here. Well, they know there's going to be a giant aquarium in here because of all the alterations that had to be done to the house to accommodate it. And of course, you know, because the houses are not all built at the same time, they're built one after the other. Everybody watches everybody else's house being built. And then they talk to the people on site, or they talk to the guy that comes to their house to fix something or whatever. And that guy goes, oh yeah, you know, we had engineers, they had to come up with support for 4,100 pounds in that front room. And they're going, what? And, you know, and it's gossip. So every neighbor we've met already knows, oh, you're the people that are going to have the giant aquarium.
I would fair that possibility for me, although we didn't have structural done. You know, people are like, well, what are you going to do down in this basement? I was like, this is going to be like aquarium rooms. And they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you know what? They won't believe that you're not doing it to do breeding or propagation to make money, that you're only doing it for your own enjoyment. You know?
I am waiting more and more as I start to get things rolling when those questions are going to start becoming more common of, can I buy things from you? Which is probably going to be met by I'll tell you the coral seller that
Mm-hmm.
I'm trading with, or my local store.
Yeah.
I'm not getting in that business.
And the way to look at that too is it kind of spreads the network. So as more people come along and are interested, then you can provide them with the connections to find the things they want, or to learn the things they need to learn, or maybe answer questions that aren't going to take up 4 hours of time trying to answer, you know, stuff like that. Because at the beginning, it is so overwhelming. It really is.
Yeah. And that's, yeah. Well, and anytime you look at someone else's aquarium system, it's, how is this thing running?
Yeah.
You know, like I'm like, I'll be looking at a tank that I'm kind of like, well, what's under the hood on this thing? You know, what's making it tick?
Mm-hmm.
Just to see, you know, is it something that's like ultra high tech or like ultra low tech? And
yeah. Well, I mean, and imagine walking into your basement or my house. This room is right by the front door. So the door is open directly off the hallway. And all people will see is the tank. And the stand isn't going to have anything under it. and there's just going to be a couple pipes going down through the floor, which I might even put some sort of a piece of something in front of it so you don't actually see the pipes. And they're not going to know anything about, like, if they don't know anything about reef tanks, they're going to think that's it. And then I'll go, well, come on downstairs and I'll show you the rest of it. And then it's going to be walking into that room, and there's going to be this waterfall and like this.
Yeah, when you come down my stairs, it's going to be rather interesting. And when I eventually get my displays going, I am likely going to set up some cameras to capture the reaction on people's faces.
Yeah.
Because they're going to come down the stairs and they're going to see that 90 or 100 gallon sitting there. But when they turn the corner, they're going to see something totally different. And
then the next fun thing is telling them that everything in here is alive. There is no plastic. Yeah. There's nothing fake. They are all living creatures. And that's the part that gets people, because they can't believe the colors and the textures and the different forms that all of this exists out there in the ocean. It still blows me away.
And to be perfect, just my look on a lot of this stuff is that, there's always been a huge push to save things like coral reefs, but if people don't understand what's on it, they have no connection with what needs to be saved.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can go, well, this is what it looks like and how beautiful this thing is, and you see everything going, then people might go, wow, that probably is worth saving, even though we can't see it every day.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of it is that we only hold a microcosm of stuff from all over the world. I mean, unless you have a biome for a specific area or region. So if you take what we have, it's just tiny samples of what's out there across the world. And some of what we have in some places is getting more and more and more rare in the wild because of habitat destruction. Well, all those reasons.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think. And I mean, my grandson already loves seeing the fish. He loves the colors. He's fascinated by it. I'm sure to him, it's just one big colorful picture. But I'm really looking forward to, he already wants to put his hands in the water. He sees it moving. So I let him, and then he put it in his mouth and he made a face. And I went, yeah, it doesn't taste very good, does it? Anyway, just the tip of his fingers. Don't worry. I'm not that grandma. I'm not that grandma that's going to give her grandson whiskey. Don't need to worry about that. Anyway.
Well, it's not going to be that, or it's not going to be here, stick your fingertips in the tank with the clown trigger.
No. I would love to have a clown trigger, but I probably never will.
I'll never forget it. When I worked at the local fish store, one of the funniest things I ever had to do. We closed at 9 o'clock at night. There were restaurants in our plaza. And generally when it came close to closing time, you'd kind of ask people, well, hey, is there anything you need? Politely, and just, and remind, we're going to be closing in a few minutes. So sometimes you get people with their Outback Steakhouse waiting little monitor, and they're just in there to look around.
Yeah.
And time. I literally was locking the door when a guy walked up with his 3 kids. So I was like, is there something you need? And he's like, no, I just want to look around. And he just kind of moved right through me. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, whatever, I'll just lock the door and I'll let him out in a few minutes. And they're walking around. I could tell he's never been around aquariums or anything. And we had a big 125 gallon that was probably it was pretty low. So it was maybe waist high. And we had a big spotted dog face in there, a foot long one. And it was a very very voracious eater. And I mean, that kind of puffer, it'd take your finger off like it wasn't even there. And I always had lids on all the tanks. So I go and I'm walking around, and the guy pulled the lid off and was dangling his fingers at this puffer that's like snapping at him. So I yelled at the guy in front of his children, and just the looks on his kids' faces, because I was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "You just took that lid off and stuck your fingers in there," and he's like, "Well, yeah." And I was like, "Do you know that puffer could like rip your finger off like it's nothing?" I was like, "You don't do that in this store." It was just funny because it was like the children were like, "Wow, Dad's getting yelled at."
Oh man.
So yeah, so there were always some highlights of working at the local fish store.
Yep.
Yeah,
Broke Reef Man says the only reason he can get corals is to tell his wife he's going to sell the frags from them.
Whatever works.
Yeah. And Sharbuckle says he can't wait till he has a tank big enough he needs to alter the structure of his house. Yeah. Hey, Tyler D. Nice to see you. Oh, yeah. Well, I think I said last week, it's commitment. You do what you have to do to make it work. And sometimes you got to drill holes in floors, rip up ceramic tiles and make holes and repair them again. And oh man, I don't know. We still have to solve that problem about how we're actually going to get through the floor and what we're going to do to rehabilitate it so it doesn't look like a giant piece of plywood down there. So it still looks nice. Yeah.
Just put some duct tape on it.
Yep. Hey, it always works. It always works. Well, I think we could probably lay a tile down without having to put grout around it, because I'm totally impressed with whoever did these floors. I don't think I've ever seen grout lines so fine. They're less than 1/8 of an inch. They're tiny. Maybe they're 1/8 of an inch, but certainly no more. And the same with the backsplash in our kitchen. Like you can barely see the grout lines between the tiles. And there's no, I mean, I've looked, and I have this superpower. If I look at a legal size sheet of paper that's completely covered with typing, if there's one mistake, my eye goes right to it. And it's the same with things like grout and stuff like that. If there's a gap anywhere or a crack anywhere, I don't know what it is, but my eye will go straight to it. I can't walk into a room with striped wallpaper because I'm looking for that corner where it's not parallel to the corner. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Oh, you're not going to do well if you're ever able to visit over here and you see the ceiling and all the taping. You're going to be like, this is chaos.
Oh man. So that's the thing. We could probably just drop a tile in where we have to take one out, and we have extras, cut one in half, just drop it in and let it sit there. I don't think we'd even have to put grout, and you wouldn't probably even notice it because the grout lines are so slim here. Oh,
yeah, I mean, it's a simple thing to do for the time being, and that way if you got to re-access it, you can without having to bust up another tile.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, hey, MB Reef, welcome. Jessica Smith, what is considered a large tank nowadays? And Tyler says anything he can pick up is considered large.
I don't know if I can answer that question.
Anything you can't pick up. Yeah, I thought I had a large tank when I had the Red Sea. To me, that was going to be my big tank. And then when we were talking about moving, and I had the opportunity to seriously think about getting something bigger, that's why I picked 300 gallons, because ultimately it's going to be around 327, I think. But that's what it calculates to at 19 inches of water, 19 and a half inches of water. So it'll be a little less than that. But I just thought that's the volume of water where just about any fish that's available, you can house that fish as long as you have the right tank mates. They're not going to outgrow it, with the exception of a flamingo tang. I keep seeing Vlamingi Tang, you need at least a 280 gallon tank. And I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I think you need about 1,000 gallon tank. And that would still be tight depending on the footprint.
Yeah, I was gonna say my 720 where I was like, it's gonna be possible, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Maybe there'll be a possibility for one in the new system, depending on what size it eventually is.
Yep.
So.
I saw a YouTube video once of some mall somewhere that had a huge a saltwater aquarium in kind of the middle of one of the wings. So like there were stores on both sides. There was the walkway on both sides, and this tank was in the middle, and it was probably, I want to say 14 feet across, and then it just went on and on and on. And it was about 9, 10, 11 feet tall, so very, very tall. And the little bit of video clip that I saw, there were 3 unicorn tangs just cruising along like this. And when I saw that, I thought, that's the problem. We put fish in our aquariums who are unable to have the space where they have that comfort level that they can just travel like that. Because in our tanks, they're always doing this. And I don't know if that's because they're looking for more space or that it's their natural thing to find the end and turn. I don't know. But they're not sort of relaxed and just being, they're always seeking something. It's just a really weird vibe that I got.
I think it depends on the fish, and like in the 480 when I had that, a lot of the fish would start to resemble more of kind of a loose group in there, and someone would just kind of hang out in the flow and stuff and calmly go around. In the 720 I saw that a little bit more. There would be a certain congregation of fish that would move, and some of it I think has to do with they all have kind of like a comfort bubble. And from my experience snorkeling and stuff, when you're not seeing individuals of fish and you're seeing more of a shoal behavior, there'll be kind of a loose grouping of fish or a really tight grouping of fish, and then there's another kind of outer bubble around them of more fish. But there might be areas that you go out a little further from that, and you're kind of seeing onesie twosies here and there, and those fish are far more skittish. They're just not as comfortable sometimes because they don't understand the surroundings. And I think there is some fish that just they need the space to swim, and if they don't have it, they need to have really high currents to swim in to keep them exercised.
Yeah. Yep. Probably higher currents than you'd want in the average reef tank, unless it was all SPS, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I've been in a few places where it was beyond where corals were, where I was in like surging waves in a cove where you'd get in a set of waves and you'd get sucked in 10 to 20 feet within a few seconds. And I'd be in that, and I was able to kind of hold steady if I turned into the waves and the current and just kind of streamlined it. But, that's the thing with fish is they do not experience current the way we do.
No.
They are low drag, and they could just kind of hover in it, and it's like you're like, whoa,
because we got all these appendages.
and so you'd be surprised at some of the animals, because when I was in Hawaii once, I saw a sea turtle, and it was kind of going up into this shallow cove, and I decided to follow at a distance to see where it was going, because I was like, the current's getting stronger and the waves are getting, like the suction going in and out with sets of waves is getting harder and harder to control myself. And I got into about 3-4 feet of water, and it turned from being some corals and stuff to all turf algae. And right where the waves were hitting the rocks, there was like half a dozen sea turtles up there. And they were eating the algae on the rocks with the waves battering them, and with the
Oh
sea
my
turtles
God.
are getting swept back and forth. So I'm kind of sitting there like, gotta not hit the sea turtle.
Yeah, no kidding. You're like a shipwreck being driven into the sea turtle bed.
You know, I always try to be really conscious of giving things space and stuff. So I didn't want to get too close. But, you know, I'm sitting here, I'm looking up, and I'm like, it's jagged lava rock into the ocean here. And you look down, and there's these sea turtles. You just see them munching away. And I'm like, okay.
Slice of nature.
Yeah.
Jessica's asking, is 100 gallons big? Honestly, I think 100 gallons is a big tank. It depends, I guess, whether that's the total system or if you have a sump. That's certainly big enough to do something like to have a decent sized fish or a decent quantity of fish, maybe, and to have a good mixed reef. You know, Alex, what was your jump? I mean, what did you have before the last system, and what made you
So
decide you needed that?
I had a 120 that was 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. And I would consider that getting into a larger tank. There's about 250 to 350 gallons in that system with the sump and everything on it. And I found, and it's just me and my 120, you know, there were a lot of fish I wanted to keep that I couldn't, but there were some that I were able to keep. Like I kept my first trio of Royal Grammas in the 120, and that was successful until I tore that tank down. I thought I had more challenges in that tank trying to control flow and have a mixed reef, where I think, you know, it becomes easier to have a mixed reef with more wild variety of flow the bigger you get.
Yeah, definitely. Because
yeah,
the
the 120 is a great size.
Yeah, and the thing we forget about a mixed reef is you also need low flow area. I mean, you need turbulent flow. Sometimes you need chaotic flow that's not intense, because the idea with especially with LPS corals, well, you know, torches and stuff, they need to be able to move to keep themselves clean, to get nutrients out of the water, all of that stuff. And I'm pretty sure that's why I lost the one torch that I lost, because, well, first of all, it was in a low light area, but second of all, the tentacles they weren't getting the flow they needed. So they would be kind of just there without moving around much. So I feel bad about that. But again, I'm jammed into this 90. There was nothing I could do about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and but you know, I think once you get into the footprint of like a 75 gallon and, you know, and up, you're starting to get into a little bit of a larger tank.
Funny you should mention a 75, because at the time I had my 29 cube and my 20 with the 15-gallon sump was when I was thinking about recombining the soft coral tank that was the 29 and the hard coral tank that was 20. And I saw a 75 at PetSmart. I couldn't believe how big it was, because when I thought 75 gallons, I didn't think that was all that much water volume. But the footprint of the thing was big. So that's what made me think, okay, well, what can I get that's around 4 feet that will fit in a room nicely, that's not going to be dominating the room? Well, my 300 is going to dominate this room, that's for sure. But the room is 10 by 12. The tank is 5 by 5.5. So I have space around it. And the 75 was what really made me understand what sort of a footprint was appreciably bigger that would give you that flexibility to do a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a really, once you get up to that, because then you're getting into that 48.
Yeah,
I wish I had a 125 and now a 300. Yeah.
I I'm probably going to get the 300 and have 650 gallons in the whole system and wish I could do 1,000, but not too soon.
Yeah, I'll let you know how my jump goes.
Yeah, that's right.
I definitely taken a leap there.
Oh yeah, and we don't know what it is yet. I can hardly wait. Listening, awesome vibes while working on cable management. Oh, thanks, Benny. That's good. How hard to manage 125 coming from 24 gallon all-in-one to now 40 breeder to 125 or just get 300. Well, honestly, I went from a 112 total system volume, which was the Red Sea tank, and I'm going to get a 300 display with 350 some in the sump. The one thing I will tell you is it's probably costing roughly 6 times as much as that Red Sea tank, which makes sense because it was a 112 gallon system. I'm going to over 600. It makes sense. But where it happens is things like sand. I can't remember if I said this last week, but my sand alone cost me $350. My skimmer is going to cost, I'm getting it on sale because they're giving me the Black Friday deal that I couldn't get because shipping it's a long story, but I'm getting a deal on it, and the skimmer is still going to cost, with tax, probably close to $2,000. The 2 pumps that I'm getting are going to be around $2,000. So between the 2 return pumps and the skimmer, that's more than my entire Red Sea system cost. So that's the big thing that you don't like. You know this intellectually, but until you start putting it all together, okay, the tank is this much, the skimmer, the lights, whatever, but it's the things like the sand and the rocks. We have to make 600 gallons of salt water. So I have 4 200-gallon pails of the Tropic Marin Reef Pro, and I'm going to use probably almost all of them by the time we're done with the cycle and with the first big water change that we're going to have to do. I'll be having to get more. So it's stuff like that where the cost really becomes a factor. If you have an unlimited budget and all kinds of money to spend, it's not so much of a factor. But if you try to jump from your 40 breeder to a 300, you probably need the better part of $30,000 just sitting somewhere waiting to be spent.
Unless you build it all.
Yeah, unless you build it all. And you can look at Alex's videos and see how to do it on a smaller scale, though. So I don't know if that helps, but that's what I'm running up against. And I knew it was going to be that much. I budgeted that much. I haven't spent that much yet. I've got better prices on things than I was expecting. So I'm hoping that that'll let me pick up some more expensive fish that I otherwise would not have been able to afford. But it's a shitload of money. And
I'll say from the management aspect of it too. I mean, it's beyond the financial cost of it. There is a time commitment that's going to be there. And if you have the financial means to do it, you know how much time you have to spend on it and how difficult it is to just manage it overall has a lot to do with the design and the equipment you buy and your understanding of how it functions. And if you take the time and you design something well, I felt comfortable, and I did on several occasions with my last aquarium system. The one time I was out of town for 2 weeks, came back for like a week, and then went out of town for like another week and a half, 2 weeks, and was able to put, have a good friend watch it. But a lot of it came down to is it was easily manageable by somebody that didn't know what they were doing. If it's every day my routine is I gotta get up, measure out this much to dose by hand, and then I gotta feed the fish 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Auto top off by hand with a pitcher filled exactly to this level. And then every now and then, you know, like my calcium reactor doesn't drip well, so I got to check that every single day. You know, it's like all those little things that you get into a routine. If you got a lot of that stuff, and you're not willing to kind of give a little up or design it to do that on its own and have comfort with it, it could be a real nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't even talk about controllers. I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna need one for monitoring, if nothing else. But yeah,
It
or
drove
calcium.
everything out of controller.
Oh no, yeah, no, yeah,
That's
uh-huh.
yeah. I work in large industrial systems, and I can tell everybody out there, do not put every single thing that you buy on a controller. That is a very poor mistake if it's on one controller that could fail.
Single
'Cause they
point of
do.
failure, because that's what in the early days of controllers, which I remember, that was the problem. It became a single point of failure because people were so entranced by this magic thing that they could do, they didn't see any reason not to. And it wasn't until things like, what if the Wi-Fi goes down? And well, that's what's happening now. Whatever I get, I want buttons I can push in case the Wi-Fi goes down. Because if the Wi-Fi goes down, it's useless. You can't do anything with it. So Bluetooth is almost better because at least you can do it when you're standing there with your phone. But if you want something you can check when you're, 300 miles away somewhere for the day, then you need the Wi-Fi thing. If the Wi-Fi goes down, you're cooked. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's one of those
I
things.
think with controllers, the ability for it to let you know that something's not right and monitor and have some minimal levels of control and that have redundancies on them. You know, like my last system, if the Apex would have died, I would have lost. I would have lost my temperature controlling, and I would have lost the calcium reactor. But I wouldn't have lost my flow, and not all of the lighting, because some of the lighting was on other stuff, and I could live without those things for a few days if I had to. It wouldn't be the best thing in the world, but
not catastrophic.
Yeah. Same thing with having multiple electrical circuits. When you trip one breaker, you got stuff diversified. So not all the flow pumps are on the same breaker, and not all the lights are on the same one.
It took a bit for us to explain to the electrical guy from the builder why we wanted our GFCIs set up the way we wanted them set up, because we didn't want one to blow a whole circuit. Because first of all, everything would go off, and second of all, you wouldn't know what went off.
Oh, so you put multiple GFCIs in one circuit then?
I don't know what we did, but whatever we did, they're not all going to blow at the same time. If one goes, it's going to be the only one that goes. But it was hard to explain why, right? Because they think of it from the perspective of safety. They think, okay, the GFCI is there, so if water gets in it or there's some electrical problem, it's meant to shut off for safety reasons. We think of it as, okay, yeah, safety, but more importantly, it gives us clues as to exactly which piece of equipment failed. And it also allows the balance of everything to keep running, because if it all shuts off, you got big trouble. If one piece of, like you pointed out, if your Apex went, if one or two things go because they're plugged into that one, then you've got other stuff, redundancy to take over. You're not looking at walking in the room and everything's black because one piece of equipment tripped one GFCI and they're all in series or parallel, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I work in an industry where failure of power and stuff is not an option. So, like some of the buildings and facilities I work with, we have several megawatts of power being drawn. We have batteries that could operate the whole facility for several hours. We have multiple power grids that we're connected to where we have basically gone to the power company and say you got to feed us through multiple substations.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, we have generators
Mhm.
that could take the whole load and run the
Yeah.
place for days.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I've taken a lot of my work experience in that stuff and understanding redundancy, and after seeing, knowing that even though you spend a ton of money on something doesn't mean that it's not going to have a mechanical failure, because
Oh,
it happens.
exactly. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big things, one of the big reasons I'm going with the radiant heating, because when you look at what goes wrong with reef tanks, a lot of times the catastrophes are heater failures. So
Yeah, and I would just not even know what to do with myself. Not only just heater failures that kill your animals, I've seen people have house fires start with those things.
yeah, yeah.
I do not. I have one going now. They do work, but you got to replace them. They don't make them like they used to. I'll say that. And the radiant heating, to me, that just it eliminates a lot of that stuff out of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
WV Reefer says he wanted a 300 deep dimension, but was told by the Queen, I get one wall space that was just shy of 6 feet. So 150 tall it was. Cool. And Benny wants to win the Mega Millionaire Powerball, and money won't be an issue. Yeah.
I think someone won the Mega Millions last night in Michigan. So
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
Tristan, hey, Tristan's Reef. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're doing well and staying safe, and I hope the business is going well. When I moved to the 350, the price jump was truly remarkable. However, I found going with exotic pumps really jettisoned the costs. Yeah. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that they're lasting longer. Maybe he'll clear that up a little.
Yeah, I can take that a couple ways.
Yeah, me too. Tyler says he's happy with his 94 years going. Yeah. Well, I'm impressed that you've been running it for 4 years, because I think I've said this before. A lot of reef keepers go through tanks really quickly before giving them time to mature. And I include myself in that, even though my tanks have been maybe 3 years, or 2 years. I want to get this tank to 5 years. I want to see what things look like after 5 years. And what I've seen too is people, they upgrade like in 6 months or 8 months. Hey, Benny, I think you're a guy who went through a lot of tanks in a short period of time because you loved it so much. So I think 4 years, that's a decent amount of time, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely want to get beyond the 3 years, and that wasn't even a planned. I was happy with the tanks I had. So
Oh, yeah.
it was just we decided to move houses, and then then the idea got in my head I could do something else. So
yeah, that's what happens. Well, and when we knew we wanted to move, it suddenly became, what can I do? What do I need in a house that will let me do what I can do? I probably could have gone with a different style of house and even gone bigger. But the question is, what can I manage? I mean, like I said, I'm not getting any younger. And in not too far from now, it's going to get harder and harder physically to do a lot of the things that you have to do with a reef tank, like climbing up on stairs and leaning over, and I'm not heading in the right
need
direction.
those, Cindy. You got a grandkid that can come over and.
Yeah, that's right. The minute
All
that
right.
kid is 5, he's doing water changes.
Yeah. All right. Today you're gonna start fragging corals for me.
Yeah. Here's the equiment. Here's the glasses and the gloves.
You ever use a diamond saw, kid? Oh, yeah. You're gonna learn today.
Did you see that thing on Facebook where There were a whole bunch of photos posted of a little 1-year-old girl in super dangerous activities. They were photoshopped by her dad because he was
Oh.
getting annoyed with how often his wife was checking in on how things were going. So what he would do is Photoshop and start sending back pictures of the kids sitting on the edge of a cliff with the water, the lighthouse 100 feet below, or him and the little girl on a tightrope. It was really funny. Oh, here's Tristan. Okay, for example, a Biz Pumps destroyed his budget when Vector L2s would have done the job admirably with US-based support and fast shipping. Yeah, I could see that. Everything's exponential when you go bigger. It's true. Correcting issues or
Yeah,
dosing is expensive, not to mention feeding the fish. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a lot of, especially like, you know, I won't lie, that the financial thing, I do not have an unlimited budget for my system.
Mhm.
There are some expensive pumps I'm buying, but there's other things that I'm going to start DIYing because I'm not paying that amount of money for something to do, you know,
Mhm.
X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I know what you
so
mean.
and I don't know, feeding the fish when you get into a really big tank, you should really get to know the local seafood markets.
Mhm.
Um,
That's my
yeah,
plan, is to start
I
making my own fish food.
I go
That
to the Asian grocery store. I haven't in a long time, but you know, I used to go over there every month or two, and I pick up a lot of um, a lot of oddball seafood items that you just can't get
Mhm.
um, at the regular grocery store, where you know it's like, oh, you can get whole squid real easy, or you know,
Yeah.
different types of clams or shrimp, and you know,
Yeah.
or like
Because
getting
that
nori.
that varied diet really makes a difference for long-term health with fish. And I think I mean, aside from saving money, and knowing what's going into your fish food so you're not adding anything that you don't want, just even being able to vary their diet to that degree, it really does, it's got to keep them healthier longer term. Tristan, I remember when I could buy a single bucket of salt. Now I'm buying 3 or 4 buckets of salt. Buying food was a few packs of mysis for the month. Now I'm buying giant bulk packs. Oh, well. Yeah, like I said about my salt, my 4 200-gallon buckets of Pro Reef. It's going to be
Yeah, and
gone.
it's I don't know. As I even with my last system, I looked at water changes a lot differently. Um, you know, I was only doing like a 10% water change. Well, wasn't even a 10% water. Well, let's see. Yeah, it's like less than a 10% water change every month I was doing on that system, and that still helped a lot.
Yeah,
It becomes impractical at
yeah,
certain sizes.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I think really once you get to that point, um, if you need to do a water change to reset something, like if there's some sort of a problem that happens where a water
and
change is the best way to reset it,
you're beyond the point that that's going to help.
yeah, maybe so, because
I
you'd
mean,
really have to do a lot. Yeah,
it's like steering a cruise ship uh, into a dock. If you don't do it right, and there's a point of no return where once it's gonna crash into that dock, it's not gonna stop.
yeah,
Um, Same thing
yep.
will happen in a big tank. It moves a lot slower generally. Um, but if it's that bad in a real big tank, there is no amount of water change that's gonna save you.
No, no, it's true, because you can't make it fast enough either. Tristan says, for the first time ever, I actually bought BRS, soda ash, calcium chloride, and magnesium in 5-gallon buckets. Wow. Oh, good night, Benny. Thanks for coming by. Hope to see you next
Right?
week. Yeah.
It's
Well,
it's
it's
a
gonna it'll be an eye opener for me for sure.
Yeah, it's going to become very interesting when it gets time to start mixing up salt water over here. This is like I've gotten to the point where I'm thinking just due to the size and how I'm going to eventually start it off and mix it, that I'm going to like gravity feed bags in slowly by a pump or something to just auto mix it slowly over time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's got to be a way to do that. Tristan says,
yeah,
Because-
there's always a way.
wow. So budget can't keep up to succeed. Yeah, it's true. I'm hoping that I've gone through my learning phase of spending stupid money, where I've bought things that were probably not the best buying decisions I made. They were things I didn't use for very long because I should have done more research or thought it through a little bit better. And I'm hoping I'm through that phase to where with this tank, if something comes along and I think I need it, that's again where the patience comes in. I'll think about it a lot longer so that I'm not faced with shelves and shelves full of stuff I'm never going to use again because
Yeah,
it didn't do what I needed it.
the other thing too is when you get into a big tank, it's you just being budget conscious, trying to fill a large aquarium system
Mhm.
with livestock quickly is
Yeah.
not a road you should go down.
No, and I'm lucky, and you're in kind of the same situation where I have an entire reef full of livestock, coral and fish, and I'll get more fish, but the coral, and it's growing now, and I want to give it the space that it needs to grow. So that's going to inform how I set things up. And I think when you have a smaller tank, and I've done this when I went to the coral show and came home with 25 acropora, and I mounted them all 2.5 inches apart. Well, that's a mistake when they start to grow. They'll go to this certain phase where they'll all look beautiful and colored up and they're starting to encrust. And then 2 months later, you look at it, you're consuming incredible amounts of elements, calcium, alkalinity. They've all grown so much that you have to do something about it. And I'm hoping I won't make that mistake again with this new tank. And, I think I do have probably enough to pretty much spread out through the whole tank and let it grow.
Yeah,
So-
I'm hoping like that's a lot of it too, is just kind of self-propagating things slowly. I don't need to put reef lighting over the whole tank all at once.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna have enough coral to put in it. I'm gonna do things in phases. Yeah, I'll probably put lights over the whole thing, but they're not gonna be sufficient for corals, except for the areas I want, and then I'm just gonna slowly add stuff to it as I need it.
Yeah. 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 And it won't be a mistake to do that because it'll be nice. I'm looking forward to seeing what certain corals look like as colonies. And my war coral, for example, it started out the size of a quarter. And now it covers this much area. And where I have it in the 90s is up bridging 2 rock structures, and it's starting to encrust out on the adjacent structures. So when I take those apart, I'll not only have the original rock, I'll also have other places, depending on where I put it in the tank, where that stuff will continue to grow in those spots. And then I'll have my original one. But I absolutely love how it looks all spread out on this rock. And I'm going to be looking for another relatively smooth rock without too many variations in the surface so that it can continue to grow and on to a new rock. And I'd love to have it this big around someday, And that's what you can do in a big tank if you give yourself enough space and you do the proper planning that you can't accomplish in a smaller tank. And I guess that's the phase I'm at, is I'm looking for those massive growth colonies and just see what it looks like. So
Yeah, no, I'll be doing the same thing with some things. I just want to let some stuff kind of have its own areas, and then
yeah.
I'm definitely going to take some different approach to some different types of coral, especially like zoanthids and pallies, where I'm going to try and, isolate the different species a little bit better so that they can't overrun each other.
Yeah.
Because I love to look at them, but it's like I as cool as Nirvana's looked, I was getting a little sick of them at the end there, which I kind of laughed because somebody I knew was like, "Oh, I want those! Like they're so cool!" And I'm like, "Here you go." So like, I'll get, I was like, "Oh, I'll take a couple." I was like, "Here, take a few more." It's okay.
Knock yourself out. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's plus, I just want to get everything settled into this tank. There's some stuff I have in there that I'm like, I really kind of want to frag a few things out. I don't want to touch anything in there right now. I just want to let it go.
Yep.
Because some of the softies have been growing in there. And the LPS, some of them have been doing okay. So it's, but I just want to get them to a more stable environment.
Yeah, there's so many things you just can't do correctly. With the 90, I don't feel like I can light it correctly because front to back is very narrow and it's got the brace across the middle. And the rocks all touch the glass on all sides. And there are corals that are in shaded areas that are getting barely enough light to survive. I have one chalice that was doing extremely well after I had it for 2 years. It was finally starting to grow and spread out. It's purple and red. And I think there might be a fingernail size of it remaining that's getting the most dim light, just enough for it to survive. I'm hoping it can hang on for another 3 weeks, month, 5 weeks, I don't know.
That's kind of the boat I'm in. Is I'm just trying to, I've been doing some more water changes on it and got the skimmer running more full time again, but just gonna give it time, and I don't want to rush this. So
no, exactly.
But if I get the pond liner, with the pond liner in, I kind of get it figured out. I think I'll cut out the window tomorrow. And if I get my replacement piece of glass, hopefully in within a couple of weeks of getting that, I can decide on my sealant and get it ordered it in, and then get that installed, because the tile's going to go in easy. And then once the tile's done, it's just going to be ready for glass. So fingers crossed I'm more gentle with this piece getting it in here. So I might have my buddy come over and help me with that one. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So,
baby steps.
Yeah. But, once we get that done, I get this tank sealed up. That'll be a good, I can get the plumbing done for it, get the old skimmer up and running, get the UV sterilizer ready to go.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be a matter of just getting some of that stuff and getting the heating system running again. It's like I'm so close, and I'm like, well, wait, you got the heating system and the calcium reactor and the UV sterilizer, and it's a lot.
My cat is running in and out here. I think he's playing with a piece of styrofoam. I wondered if it was my husband going, "Aren't you done yet?" I guess I should say goodnight. It's after midnight again.
Yeah, my phone's about to die, so
we always do that. We run out your phone.
I'm hoping to get a new one soon.
Alex, geez, try having two beautiful elegance and acclimation boxes about to break out, but you can't take them out because the pyramid butterfly fish pull the tentacles off. Not eat them, just pull them off. Bastard.
See, I got a solution for that. Have a big fish tank and a reef tank, and then when you get people or fish that don't behave well, you exile them to the other tank without corals.
Well, you see, now that I have the basement sump, guess what I can do? If I have fish that are jerks up here, I can put them downstairs and they'll have a reasonable life. Because they'll be in another big, quantity of water, and the environment will be correct for them. And if they're going to be jerks, they can be jerks down there.
Yeah, and that's why I love my LPS corals, and that's why I will not put angels in my reef, or
Yeah.
I'd really be hesitant on any kind of butterflies too.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
a copper band, but
I got to do
I
some more research. I've always had such good luck with fish. And I don't know what I like to keep my fish really fat. And maybe that's why I've been lucky, because they don't have, and this is why somebody was saying they feed their fish every other day. Nat King Reef was saying every other day. I'm afraid if I did that, my green wrasse would start going after either other fish, or he'd be looking for hermit crabs, or, because he's
yeah,
hungry, because they're always looking for food. So I guess that's another piece of information that's good to have when you're trying to decide what fish to get, is like, for example, anthias, not that they're going to go after your inverts, but for them to be healthy, they have to eat lots of times a day. So they're always going to be hungry, or they're not going to be getting enough food because they're so active. So yeah, it matters. The feeding habits
yeah.
matter a lot. Yeah.
All
Anyway,
right, well, I'll have a good night and a good rest of the weekend, and I'll probably talk to you next week.
yeah, thanks for spending the time, Alex, and the tour. And good luck with what you got on your plate coming up. And I hope it
Thanks.
goes better than the broken glass. But now you've
So do
done
I.
that. Now you've done that. It's out of the way.
Something had to happen bad, so I'm glad that it's that. Hopefully, is the end of it.
Yeah, 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 me too. All right, take it easy and stay safe.
Thanks for having me. Talk
Yeah,
to you later.
yeah.
Bye.
Bye. And bye, everybody. And I appreciate y'all coming in tonight into the chat. It's been great. Had a bit of a slow start with you guys all listening to me, but I got to tell you all my news, so that's good. And we will see you next week. And I'll have a little bit more news, maybe. Maybe we'll have some water in some stock tanks by then. You just never know. All right. Good night, all. Thanks so much for participating.